Chapter 239. NT, Regular Chapter, Chapter 239 Showdown with Jianghua. Brother Warhawk, I have heard you come from a famous prestigious clan. I am sure you don't lack such Tao books, might as well give it to me. A sweet voice of Ji Moon sounded in Warhawk's ears. Get lost! Warhawk shouted, his golden Jinyuan burst out of his body and rushed towards her. He did not show even a shred of tender affection towards this lovely girl, rather there was decisive killing intention hidden in this attack. This book must be handed over to our Wan True Union. A big hand clutched down towards the book. I will see who dares to stop me. Wang Purple shot a divine beam towards the others. All attacks hit simultaneously on the Tao book. Boom! The terrifying explosion tore the book open and 4 pages fluttered out in the air. There were only 4 pages in this Tao book. At this time, Jianghua and others no longer entangled in battle and rushed towards the 4 pages, each aiming for 1 page of the Tao book. Once they were done seizing the Tao book's pages, they saw the recorded secret technique and could not help but get excited all of a sudden. Although Jianghua was a step slower than the other 3 super experts, but that did not prevent him from seizing a page. However, before he could see the secret technique recorded in it, there came a loud dragon roar and a huge shadow dived towards him. Bold! Who dares to mess with Wan True Union? Jianghua suddenly got furious and turned around to slap his palm towards that huge shadow. It was actually a coiling dragon. His palm collided with the huge coiling dragon and instantly destroyed it. At this time, he finally looked at the page in his other hand only to find out that it was no longer in his hand. The Tao book's page had already been snatched by a blue figure, yes, by Yishiwen. Jianghua's pupils suddenly contracted and he shouted crazily. It's you! I have been here all along, but it seems Deputy Chief Jiang did not notice me. Yishiwen indifferently said. At this time, the other 3 super experts stopped fighting because they knew that continuing to fight did not make sense. Each person won a page of the Tao book, so it was a win-win situation for all. If you are too greedy and want to monopolize all the benefits, then you end up ruining everything. As for the others, they simply did not stand a chance against these super experts, and could only accept this outcome bitterly. Actually, right now, everyone was curiously looking at Yishiwen. This guy was really courageous, actually dared to challenge Jianghua and Wan True Union. I am surprised to see that you actually dare to appear in front of me. Jianghua's eyes instantly revealed signs of extreme hatred. The usual indifferent expression on his face was now replaced by a vicious, crazed expression. The culprit who destroyed his hand was standing right in front of his eyes, so how could he possibly stay calm? Why should I not dare to appear in front of you? Yishiwen looked coldly at Jianghua and said, Have you forgotten what I said back then? I shall teach you and your Wan True Union a valuable lesson about why you shouldn't have fucked with me. The anger could be seen burning intensely in Yiziwen's eyes as he stared at Jianghua. Both sides were equally burning with hatred. Some experts remembered hearing rumors about Jianghua chasing down an expert and losing an arm in the fight. Could this guy be the one who blasted Jianghua's arm? Such a vicious enmity was far more than ordinary. Quickly hand over the page. Do you actually think that someone like you can have it? A member of Wan True Union stepped forward and said, It seems that Deputy Chief Jiang needs a man like you to do his bidding, and do you really think that it's just a matter of 1 page of Tao book? Yishiwen grinned and said, Shut up and hand over the page, otherwise killing you won't be a tough task. Another member of Wan True Union said, No need to waste your breath on a dead man. He has dared to provoke our alliance, so he is already a dead man. A master of the Truth's 6th stage said in an authoritative manner. Although he was just an ordinary member of Wan True Union, but he used to be the leader of an alliance before reshuffling and held enough influence. He immediately rushed forward and his hand transformed into a big hand and stretched out to arrest Yishiwen. Yishiwen just flicked his finger. Puff! In an instant, everyone saw that disciple screaming pitifully and his entire arm was torn off, leaving behind a pool of blood on the floor. He was squealing loudly like a pig. Yishiwen took 1 step and instantly disappeared in front of everyone. He instantly dashed into the crowd of Wan True Union and had already recognized the faces of those who were mocking and insulting him a while ago. Puff! 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 Almost in a flash, several disciples of Wan True Union were attacked by Yi Shiwen and were chopped into pieces. They never saw him coming and were suddenly overawed. It took some time to realize that he messed with the wrong guy. However, it was too late because now they had no choice but to stand there like pigs and obediently wait to be butchered by this peerlessly ruthless man. Moreover, this scene acted as a deterrent for several other experts who were planning on stealing the page from Yi Shiwen later on. But after witnessing this carnage, they would never dare to even dream about messing with him. One must know that Wan True Union mostly consisted of experts of truth 5th stage and 6th stage, but in the face of this Death Reaper, they certainly did not stand a chance. In fact, there was no room for any fight back. Warhawk and the other super experts were also earnestly watching the whole scene and suddenly frowned. They never knew that a formidable expert like Yi Shiwen was present among them. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen became a reckless guy who was decisive, brave and formidable. These few moments were enough to make them consider him as an equal. In this world, strength was not only the ultimate law, but also the ultimate justice. In this world, only strong were revered. Jiang Hua was stunned for a moment, and within this one moment, Yi Shiwen had already butchered several of his subordinates. His face turned blue with anger as he shouted, "You are courting death! You don't understand what you have done! From now on, you won't have a place to hide on the entire Demon Island!" As his voice fell, his big hands stretched out and shot a huge mountain of divine light aimed at Yi Shiwen. Compared to 2 months ago, he was now much more tyrannical and his practice speed was far beyond the imagination of ordinary experts. However, how could he ever compare with Yi Shiwen? Yi Shiwen shot his palm and released a coiling dragon that roared and flew directly towards the mountain of divine light and tore it pieces. Yi Shiwen jumped towards Jianghua, while at the same time, his skin turned golden in color, making him appear just like an ancient overlord reborn. His power completely burst out and paled the complexions of all the experts present on the scene. How could this guy have such extraordinary strength? His strength was not one bit inferior to that of Warhawk and the other super experts. Even Jiang Hua was surprised to no limit. After all, in just 2 months, Yi Shiwen actually managed to grow so powerful. His own practice speed simply could not rival with Yi Ziwen's. Last time, it had been so difficult for Jiang Hua to deal with Yi Shiwen, and also lost an arm when there was a difference of 2 levels between the two. But now, Yi Shiwen was clearly much stronger than before, although he himself progressed a lot in the last 2 months and was on the verge of breaking through to the truth 8th stage. If he managed to step into the 8th stage, then he wouldn't be afraid of anyone on this island. Then, he would have sufficient power to run amok like those super experts. But before he could have a breakthrough, he once again clashed with Yi Shiwen. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was now much more tyrannical than 2 months ago. Thinking of this, an intense killing intention flashed in his bloodshot eyes. Jiang Hua shouted and congealed a sierra of divine light, so big that there literally was no escape route for Yi Shiwen. This was a battle of life and death, and both of them were aware of that. Under Jiang Hua's command, the huge sierra of divine light descended towards Yi Shiwen. This was the same attack he used last time, but this time, it was more powerful and frightening. Yi Shiwen also displayed the progress he made in the last 2 months, and sent his coiling dragon towards the descending sierra. The coiling dragon as if devoured the sierra of divine light almost instantly, and this caused a massive explosion in the hall. Last time, Jiang Hua had an overwhelming superiority in the battle, but this time, the tables turned in Yi Ziwen's favor and Jiang Hua was completely suppressed. Boom! The killing intention spread in all directions and Yi Shiwen went all out, displaying various martial art techniques one after another without restraint. Jiang Hua also felt the crisis and went all out, displaying various martial techniques. He lifted his hand and a mountain of divine light transformed into a sword and instantly swept towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not dodge, just stood there like a mountain. Jiang Hua had clearly been completely suppressed by him, but he did not have any relaxation. He did not want to give any chance to Jianghua and decided to end this as fast as possible. Yi Zaiwen's gilded tyrant form was working at its best. He just stretched out his palm and effortlessly caught the sword of divine light. To be continued. NT. I have got few mails from the readers suggesting me to drop MGS and pick up a better and more interesting project because MGS has become monotonous or something. Well, just thought of sharing this with everyone. I don't plan on dropping MGS because I know how awesome it is, rather I want to increase the pace since things are going to get interesting in the coming chapters. You guys seem to forget that MGS has 3,700 plus chapters. So far, you have basically read only 6% of the whole story or even less. Winky face. Spoilers ahead, MGS has beautiful romance but it is still quite far away from the current chapter. Yi Shiwen is gonna travel to new worlds in his new golden armor. He will be like a hero of justice or something. Heard this from a friend who has read the Ross all the way to the latest chapter. To be honest, the author has not yet started the world building properly. And you can just imagine the kind of world building he has done in the coming 3,000 chapters. Don't even ask how many realms are there above Legendary Realm. Chapter 240. NT, Regular Chapter, Chapter 240, Heavenly Phoenix Regeneration Technique. Boom! The sword of divine light was directly crushed by Yi Shiwen. He just stood there as if nothing happened. Then, he suddenly rushed forward. Both sides attacked maliciously and engaged in a fearsome battle. Not good! Jianghua noticed that Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body had also leveled up in the last 2 months, and now he did not stand a chance against it. Yi Shiwen arrived in front of Jianghua and thrust his palm. Bang! His palm pounded on Jianghua's chest and shattered his sternum. He screamed pitifully and spat a mouthful of blood, while simultaneously retreating several dozen meters to escape from Yi Zaiwen's next attack. Jianghua was literally shocked to death. He never thought that there would be such a huge disparity between their strengths. Last time, he was the one who completely suppressed Yi Shiwen, and this time, the exact opposite was happening. He was depressed and felt like vomiting blood. But at this time, Yi Zaiwen's attacks became more and more intense. His hands transformed into a dragon sword and stabbed towards Jianghua. Yi Zaiwen's command, over the skills he had practiced, was so profound that it left everyone stunned. Poof! Jianghua couldn't dodge and failed to block Yi Zaiwen's sword attack, as a result of which, his other arm was also chopped off by Yi Shiwen. After practicing Gilded Tyrant form up to 50%, Yi Zaiwen's flesh had become so formidable that his punches and kicks were enough to explode his opponents. Jianghua was enduring severe pain, but he still somehow congealed a massive sierra of divine light and shot towards Yi Shiwen. Ha! Yi Shiwen used his hands to tear this sierra to shreds and immediately rushed towards Jianghua. Yi Shiwen was not sticking to his moves or usual fighting style. He began to understand his own path and felt the blood boiling in his body. He heard the roars of a vicious dragon as if coming from his own body. Yi Shiwen sneered. Today you die! Yi Zaiwen's hands moved slightly and 2 coiling dragons suddenly soared up, entangled together, and dived towards Jianghua. Boom! The 2 dragons bulldozed Jianghua as he severely fell to the ground and the entire palace trembled. Stone fragments were sent flying in all directions. A huge crater appeared in the floor while Jianghua could not endure any more when all the bones in his body shattered into pieces and punctured his flesh internally. Everyone was stunned watching this scene. Yi Shiwen was ridiculously powerful. They originally felt that he was very strong but probably not as strong as the super experts, but after witnessing this battle, they were forced to change their opinions. Within moments, he crushed a tyrannical expert like Jianghua. Jianghua screamed as blood oozed out of the numerous tiny holes on his body. Suddenly, his whole body was enveloped in some kind of scarlet light. He apparently used a secret technique to escape. At this time, Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand and directly grasped the ball of scarlet light. Poof! Jianghua was directly caught by Yi Shiwen and crushed to death. Everyone froze and their faces revealed dumbfounded expressions. Jianghua, a deputy chief of Wanchu Union, was crushed to death by Yi Shiwen. This was a huge loss for Wan True Union, because they not only lost face by losing their deputy chief and several elite experts, but also lost an opportunity to obtain the Dao Book's page. A high-level expert was effortlessly killed by Yishiwen. Now they knew that Jiang Hua was never a match of Yishiwen. This was going to stir up the entire Wan True Union, and it would make things difficult for Yishiwen. After all, Jiang Hua was one of the two deputy chiefs, not to mention their mysterious leader was still around. When Jiang Hua was strong enough to stand side by side with the other super experts, then one could imagine the strength of this mysterious leader. So it could be said that although Wan True Union faced big loss, but this was not enough to cripple them. However, this incident was enough to prove the ruthlessness of Yishiwen. Now, no one would dare to mess with him. At this time, Yishiwen appeared extremely horrifying to everyone, and his imposing aura was also monstrous. Yishiwen was not in a rush, just crossed hands behind his back and stood there like a mountain. His very presence was overbearing and unparalleled. This Dao Book was the most precious item in this immortal palace, but now that it was divided among 4 tyrannical experts, no one wished to stay here and disperse to search the other parts of this enormous palace. Warhawk and Wang Purple soon left. Only Ji Moon arrived in front of Yishiwen, smiled gracefully and said, "Considering what we saw today, I am afraid the news about Brother Yes' invincible strength will soon spread throughout the Demon Island." "Fairy Maiden is flattering me," Yishiwen politely said. He was such a person, kind for kind, ruthless for ruthless. It is easy to be disrespectful to others, but takes a big heart to respect them. A person who doesn't know compassion can only respond with arrogance to the politeness shown to them. "I have come to know that there are some misgivings between our deputy chief Lu Yueru and Brother Yi. I hope Brother Yi can spare her and not punish her too severely," Ji Moon said. Yishiwen suddenly understood why she suddenly came to him. He did not know that Lu Yueru actually joined Goddess Union, but he did not care. Nothing big happened between him and her. His direct enmity was with Xiaojin, not her. "She and I have no enmity, some misunderstanding and nothing more," Yishiwen said. "That's good. If you have free time later, our Goddess Union will gladly welcome you," Ji Moon said respectfully, and elegantly flew away. Yishiwen did not follow experts to other parts of the immortal palace. He sat cross-legged on the spot and began to examine the page. There were ancient scriptures written all over the page. Since he only got one page, some of the information was divided, but he figured that the Dao Book definitely belonged to a peerless ancient influence. Stunning Taoist skills were recorded in the book, and on the page seized by Yishiwen, the skill recorded was called Phoenix Regeneration Technique. It was a technique born out of Phoenix comprehension and granted the magical ability of repairing any injury to the practitioner. For example, he could heal all the injuries he got 2 months ago within few breaths with the help of this technique. In fact, he could also regrow cut-off body parts. Of course, this was going to be possible only after perfecting it, but he had the mysterious space, so it shouldn't be a problem. It would just require consumption of many Ling Dawn. Yishiwen suddenly held his breath. How was it possible for such a Taoist skill to exist? If he had this skill 2 months ago, then he didn't need to escape from Jianghua. It could be described as the supreme divine technique of life insurance. This divine technique was most appropriate for gilded tyrant form. Once Yishiwen would perfect both these techniques, a trivial attack wouldn't work on him, and even if he was tragically injured in a tyrannical battle, he would use Phoenix Regeneration Technique to regenerate any or all injuries. It could be estimated that the other 3 secret techniques were also rare masterpieces of Taoism. Now that they obtained great benefits, they would certainly become his rivals. However, Yishiwen did not want to think much about other people's possessions. For now, the most important task was to master the Phoenix Regeneration Technique. Once perfected, even if he desired death, it would be difficult to die. NT's surprised face, Yemo saw this secret technique and could not help but jump up with excitement. This secret technique probably comes from the ancient race of mystical Phoenix, passed down from generation to generation, but Phoenix race has vanished from the 10,000 Worlds community countless years ago. I must say, This technique should be a supreme secret of the ancient Phoenix clan, and only the direct blood descendants were allowed to practice it. How can it be here? Yishuan frowned. This influence was far more terrifying and powerful than he initially imagined. It was hard to digest the fact that they actually possessed the secret technique of ancient Phoenix race that was said to have disappeared countless millenniums ago. He came to know from Emo that dragon, Phoenix, and so-called other ancient beings had disappeared countless eras ago. It seemed like there occurred a terrible war in the 10,000 Worlds community, and led to their disappearance. One must note that all this happened long before the beginning of the era of Yemo's previous owner, the Great Devil King. There were dragon legends everywhere, but no one alive had actually seen one. This influence was ancient and huge, perhaps far beyond the imagination of Emo as well. Not only could they get an access to the ancient Phoenix technique, but might have also obtained secret techniques of other races which simply went against the heaven's will. He continued to read and found some explanations about Phoenix regeneration, recorded in order to help increase the understanding of the practitioners. After studying the Phoenix regeneration technique all day, he had to admit that its effects simply defied the heaven's will. When used in coordination with the Gilded Tyrant form, his battle efficiency and resilience would have no limits, rising dramatically all the way to an entirely new and profound level. But the secret techniques, now in the possession of the other three individuals, were not going to be ordinary either. To be continued. NT. It seems my comment on previous chapter triggered a series of reactions from the readers. I am glad to know that people still love MGS and want to read more. Your comments motivate me a lot. Grinning face. Chapter 241. NT. Regular Chapter. Chapter 241. War with Wan True Union. Immortal Palace became the source of a sensation that spread throughout the Demon Island. 4 ancient Taoist skills had been divided among 4 tyrannical experts. However, the last one wasn't seized by Jianghua but a rather little-known expert, the same guy who became famous few months ago when he crushed a law fragment. Yi Zaiwan had become famous when the law fragment incident occurred, but for the next few months, he remained low-key and everyone was busy in reshuffling and completely forgot about him. Moreover, later, the rumors spread that Deputy Chief of Wan True Union chased down and killed Yishuan. However, no one thought that he would actually appear once again, and that too with such a blast. The emergence of Yishuan went side by side with the annihilation of Jianghua and several other elites of Wan True Union. Yishuan stunned everyone on the Demon Island and soared all the way, gaining a spot among the handful of super experts. So many experts saw how the elite members of Wan True Union were butchered by Yishuan. Now, there remained only one deputy chief in their alliance. The loss of a deputy chief was a matter of far more concern when compared to the loss of several elites. To put it bluntly, it could be said that the elites had grouped together on the Demon Island in various alliances only to seek greater benefits in a relatively safer way. The loss of few elites shouldn't matter much to them because it was not like they shared some kind of bond. However, the loss of Deputy Chief was a bigger issue because it put a big question mark on the reputation of the alliance and affected everyone associated with it. Everyone was waiting to see what kind of response would come from Wan True Union. And Wan True Union did not really let them down. They spread the news that within the remaining time on the Demon Island, they would continue to look for Yishuan and kill him once found. The informants would be rewarded with 10 Ling Dawn, and if someone managed to kill Yishuan, then they would be awarded the vacant position of Deputy Chief of Wan True Union. This was like the calm before a storm. One could see that this war was going to last for a long time. Many people guessed that this should continue until the arrival of the Demon Island's opening time. When Wan True Union issued the search and destroy command, a lot of experts began to help them in the search. At this time, Yishuan was in a cave and practicing Phoenix regeneration technique. He was unceasingly circulating Xingyuan throughout his body and following the process as recorded in that page. Lingqi was being constantly injected in his brain and helping him in slowly grasping all the secrets of Phoenix regeneration technique inside the mysterious space. He was not at all bothered about what all things happened on the island during his absence. He was just one man, and it was not all difficult for him to hide from the pursuers on such a vast island, not to mention his restraining breath technique was active all the time, so experts of 5th or even 6th stage weren't able to sense his presence. So no matter how much they searched, Yishiwen was not afraid. After all, the demon island was too big, and so long as he ran a little farther towards the depths, it would be impossible to find him. Right now, he was very confident. Days passed, and a month later, Yishiwen finally completely grasped the phoenix regeneration technique. Moreover, he was also getting stronger and stronger all the while. Now, he was much stronger than he used to be before he started the practice. Now, even if he was split in half, he would be able to regenerate and reorganize the cut-off parts of his body. This was the mind-blowing fact about this technique, because it was actually impossible even for the demon race to regenerate after being cut into 2 halves. However, such a magical ability was inherent to Phoenix race. After perfecting this divine technique, his close combat efficiency progressed by leaps and bounds. He could now compete with the experts of truth 8th stage, and experts of truth 7th stage could not even dream of putting even a single scratch on him. Yishiwen was now confident to deal with much higher level opponents with ease. And it was not like he didn't know what was happening on the island while he was busy practicing this technique. Wu Shaochuan was constantly collecting news and transmitting important information to Yishiwen. They had started a full-fledged search and destroy operation against him, but he simply did not care. In fact, this in itself was an indication of the damage done to their own practical significance, and was no different than strangulation of their beliefs at the hands of Yishiwen. But the significance of beliefs was one matter and the possession of strength was another matter. At present, Wan True Union or its second deputy chief did not scare Yishiwen. He was only concerned to know about their mysterious leader. Yishiwen was guessing that he was certainly a powerhouse of truth 8th stage or probably 9th stage, otherwise, it would have been impossible to tame a psycho like Jianghua. And experts like that possess unmatched arrogance and are never satisfied. They don't stop until they have completely subdued any or all possible rivals around them. Else, they get rid of the obstacles permanently. As long as he didn't bump into this mysterious chief, he was not afraid of the rest of the alliance. Now, with the help of Phoenix regeneration technique, even the experts of truth 8th stage wouldn't be able to kill him, so what was there to be afraid of? So what if they were going to continue the search and destroy operation for the rest of the year? Phoenix regeneration not only helped in fast regeneration of injuries, but also increased the production speed of Xingyuan within the body. Hence, unless he was fighting with an expert of half-step legendary realm or legendary realm, it would be impossible to exhaust him to death. And now that the enemy had made its move, he would not just sit passively and wait for the enemy to find him. He got the information that Wan True Union had sent its strongest members to find him. And considering that no one had seen their leader, perhaps only the second deputy chief was guarding their encampment. One must know that the 2 deputy chiefs of Wan True Union were strong enough to place this alliance in the ranks of 4 strongest alliances. Although the deaths of Jianghua and the elite members was not enough to cause severe losses to Wan True Union, but could not be ignored either. After all, Jianghua's strength used to be only slightly inferior to other super experts. And since their chief had almost never been seen before, it could be said that the other deputy chief was very powerful. Perhaps his strength was comparable to Warhawk and the others. Yishiwen did not know, and neither did he want to waste time thinking about all that. According to the information he got from Wu Shaochuan, the main forces of Wan True Union were not present in their encampment. Only the deputy chief was present to guard it along with the average members, indicating that now was the best time to attack their encampment. And most importantly, there were a variety of reasons that urged him to plan a trip to the encampment of Wan True Union. There was an irrevocable hatred between him and Wan True Union, reaching the point of kill or be killed. Yishiwen still hadn't forgotten the pledge he made to himself. Such being the case, he had nothing to say, and neither did he plan to wait. They are looking for me, so I think I should give them a chance and see if they can kill me? Yishiwen smirked and said in a strange manner. Wan True Union was one of the 4 major alliances, so it shouldn't be a problem to find its headquarters. Soon Yishuan arrived near its encampment. Wan True Union's encampment was located in a true oasis, a big place, and all of the demon beasts in the surrounding area had already been beheaded by its members. At this time, a large number of experts had gone out to find the whereabouts of Yishuan, but security here was still fairly tight. Yishuan took out his long blade and walked towards the encampment. This was going to be the battlefield for a man versus an entire alliance, and perhaps only Yishuan could do such a thing so calmly and fearlessly. Forget the entire force of an alliance, he wouldn't even think twice before clashing with that mysterious leader. Experts of Truth 5th and 6th stage were stationed at the fairly small gate. Yishuan did not hide his presence, and allowed them to spread the warning about an intruder. They immediately pulled out their weapons and coldly looked at him. Yi Zaiwen's image was already carved into their minds since the day search and destroy command was issued by their alliance. And as soon as they saw him coming, they immediately set out to cut him into pieces. To be continued. Chapter 242. NT. This is the first regular chapter for the week. I will be releasing 3 more regular chapters. Chapter 242 tramples the Wan True Union Spurki, Swordki, Bladiki, a variety of martial arts were swept towards Yishuan. They noticed that Yishuan did not budge in the face of the so many attacks, and themselves rushed forward to kill him. Yishuan waved his long blade and shot a fluctuating Bladiki so massive that it instantly crushed all the incoming attacks in one fell swoop. Puff! 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 Blood spattered everywhere, and all of the guards were instantly chopped into pieces. They were never a match of Yishuan and simply overestimated themselves, thinking they could take him on. Although they were called geniuses and attacked in numbers, but still did not stand a chance against him. The noise suddenly alarmed many experts resting inside the encampment. Wan True Union was really worthy of being one of the 4 major alliances. Even if the main force was sent out on a mission to find Yishuan, but a lot of experts had stayed back. And many of them were at the peak of True 6th stage at such a young age, which was a clear declaration of their exceptional talent. Yishuan, you are really something. You even dare to barge into our encampment? It seems you have become suicidal. An expert of True 6th stage came out and said. There was a disdainful expression on his face. Poochie! Yishuan flicked his finger and shot a laser-like concentrated energy that instantly pierced into that expert's body and tore him apart from the inside. At this time, several experts simultaneously attacked him. Die! An expert waved his spear and released an enormous spurki that rushed towards Yishuan, and it seemed as if it was going to puncture the world itself. Yishuan instantly shot an endless stream of blade light from his long blade. This mass of brilliant energy as if looked like a section cut off from the Milky Way and descended in this world. It instantly routed the spurki attack. Boom! A loud explosion occurred and the blade light swept towards that expert, and his body was split in half. He did not even get a chance to react and was instantly killed. Clang! 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 Various types of martial arts and weapons attacks were swept towards him. It seemed as if Yishuan was standing in front of a huge wave of martial attacks, coming layer after layer. Although these members of Wan True Union were not good in coordinating their attacks, but their inherent talent and power were more than enough to compensate for the lack of teamwork. Yi Zaiwen's facial expression was callous, but just by looking at him, one could see that he did not consider them as equals, rather he was chopping them like vegetables. The peerless geniuses of the 10 countries of Southeast region had become time pass, nothing more than a warm-up for Yishuan. He used Celestial Step and marched forward without stagnation, and suddenly shot a tyrannical blade light towards the team of experts. Shwa! 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 The blade light rendered all of the incoming attacks useless, then took advantage of the opportunity to attack the experts. Puff! 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 Some experts were blasted away in the sky, while some were cut in half. The ones who managed to dodge the attack were personally chopped into pieces by Yishuan. Wan True Union had placed several scouts in the nearby areas to keep a lookout for spies from other major alliances. It was needless to say that these scouts were extremely powerful, much stronger than the experts guarding the encampment. However, even those scouts had been completely wiped out by Yi Shiwen before he arrived here. They did not even get a chance to react or alert their comrades. Everyone present on the scene felt chills down their spines. When Yi Shiwen disappeared for almost a month, then no one knew where he went. A lot of people said that he was afraid of Wan True Union and ran away like a scaredy cat. Whereas, a lot of people thought that Yi Shiwen was certainly tyrannical, but how could he possibly fight against an entire alliance? When they could not find him, they began to clamor that Yi Zaiwen was a timid guy, a coward who was afraid to come out and face them. This was a tactic to provoke Yi Shiwen and compel him to come out, but a month passed and he didn't appear. But now that he finally appeared, he made an appearance like a terrifying storm. Yi Shiwen came alone and single-handedly killed so many members of Wan True Union, and this was just the beginning. This was like a big slap to those who called him coward. One man versus an alliance. No one would dare to do such a thing. Although most experts were not present in the encampment, but the remaining experts were still enough to make Wan True Union a tyrannical force. The deputy chief was a tyrannical expert, and he had personally taken command of Wan True Union in the absence of their leader. But even his presence was not enough to deter Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was extremely arrogant, and no one really knew the extent of his strength. Yi Shiwen kicked the main gate and shattered it into pieces, then strode all the way towards the central station when he suddenly sensed a powerful expert coming towards him. Yi Shiwen, I admire you for your courage. But this is a dead end for you. A loud voice like a sonic boom resounded, and an expert of Truth's 7th stage, who was standing far away from Yi Shiwen, suddenly shot towards him like a bullet while bringing an endless amount of Lingqi along with him. He congealed a huge hand made up of Lingqi and pounded it on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen just casually waved his long blade and shot an inexhaustible blade light that instantly obscured the entire area and crashed into that huge hand of Lingqi. Poof! Yi Zaiwen's blade light effortlessly annihilated that huge hand of Lingqi and advanced towards the expert. This expert of Truth's 7th stage was supposed to be the secret weapon of Wan True Union and was only slightly weaker than the two deputy chiefs. Other elite members of the alliance who went out to find Yi Shiwen were relieved that an expert like him was there to guard their encampment. His confidence was understandable, but he never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually be so tyrannical. His huge hand of Lingqi was instantly routed by Yi Zaiwen's blade light, and it advanced toward him. It seemed as if the Big Bang itself had escaped from the river of time and congealed in front of him. Poochie! He was instantly chopped into two halves. Yi Shiwen, you really want to die so badly, huh? There came a loud shout and echoed in the surroundings. I'll make sure to fulfill your wish. A blazing red figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen saw that this expert was quite young, had a fiery red hair, was tall and had a strong build. Yi Shiwen immediately figured that this guy was none other than the deputy chief of Wan True Union named Xiao Wucheng. He was the second strongest member of this alliance after the mysterious leader. There was a cold look on his face, but he did not say anything else and immediately fired a punch, releasing a blossoming burning flower of flames towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered and used Azure Dragon Rises from the Abyss move of Coiling Dragon Palm to summon a black coiling dragon that immediately coiled around him. At this time, Yi Shiwen looked like a god of war with his tamed black dragon, and as soon as the flaming flower approached him, the black coiling dragon directly tore it apart with its claws. Boom! This resulted into such a vast explosion that it wreaked havoc in all directions, reaching all the way into the sky, and the whole encampment began to burn violently. Xiao Wucheng's complexion suddenly changed because he never imagined that Yi Shiwen would be so strong. Now, he got serious all of a sudden as he clearly understood that he could no longer afford to underestimate Yi Shiwen. The flames reached all the way to the nearby pond and instantly vaporized it, forming a thick layer of mist and smoke screen, making it difficult for the spectators to see clearly. Xiao Wucheng was about to attack once more but heard an extremely sharp piercing sound and suddenly saw a horrifying Bladiki coming towards him at an incredible speed. He quickly retreated several dozen feet and somehow managed to dodge it, but immediately saw that Yi Shiwen, grasping a long blade, had already arrived in front of him. At this time, he naturally did not dare to block Yi Zaiwen's blade and repeatedly blasted waves of fire springing towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen instantly waved his long blade and released innumerable blade shadows. He displayed Missing Moon Beheader, a Xiantian-level martial technique, but he had already taken it to a whole another level, surpassing even the creator of this technique. Although the name was still the same and displayed picture was also the same, but Yi Shiwen had already revised it numerous times, transforming countless times to find the best suitable compatibility with the endless amount of Lingqi present in the air, since he could now manipulate Lingqi after stepping into Truth Realm. And with the integration of Lingqi into the basic concept of this technique, its overall might reach a whole another level. Now, even truth-level experts would find it difficult to block it. Puff! 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 Yi Zaiwen's bladiki cut through the waves of fire and extinguished the flames thoroughly. The blade shadows were dancing around Yi Shiwen and formed a protective layer so that the blazing fire was no longer able to approach his body. I will send you on the journey to hell, but before that, I will cut off your head and keep it as a trophy, Xiao Wucheng said with a deadpan look on his face. Now that he was aware of Yi Zaiwen's strength, he became much more determined to kill him. Jiang Hua's death indeed made him angry, but he did not mind too much. After all, Jiang Hua was powerful, but there was still some gap between his strength and the strength of experts at the pinnacle of Truth's 7th stage. He used to think that Yi Zaiwen's strength was enough to deal with the average experts of Truth's 7th stage, but today he discovered the tragic error in his own assumption. Yi Shiwen was far stronger than he imagined. Xiao Wucheng knew that he must go all out and gathered all his power to congeal a giant fire dragon, and it suddenly sprang towards Yi Shiwen. To be continued. Chapter 243. NT, this is the second regular chapter. 2 more regular chapters left for the week. Enjoy. Chapter 243, Source of Yellow River. Yi Shiwen, you are dead, you are so dead! Xiao Wucheng sneered again and again as his fire dragon's burning flames instantly enveloped Yi Shiwen. Xiao! 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 Suddenly, endless divinities emerged from Yi Zaiwen's body and completely wrapped him up. His body turned golden yellow, making him appear just like a golden god of war. There was no way that a fire dragon could burn his gilded tyrant body. Moreover, by using Phoenix regeneration, a damage of this level, if occurred, could be restored in an instant. Of course, the Phoenix regeneration was not universal and consumed lots of Jinyuan, or even consumed life essence to regenerate severe injuries. But Xiao Wucheng's attack was not potent enough to force Yi Shiwen to use Phoenix regeneration. The moment divinities burst out of Yi Zaiwen's body, it seemed as if a god descended on the earth. The fire dragon was unable to burn his body but was directly annihilated instead. Yi Shiwen sneered and used the celestial step to suddenly appear in front of Xiao Wucheng. Boom! Yi Shiwen was so fast that Xiao Wucheng did not get enough time to dodge. Yi Shiwen rotated once and pounded a kick on his chest. Bang! Xiao Wucheng felt as if a mountain landed on his chest. He was sent flying and the blood sprayed out of his body and as if stained the blue sky. His body fell upside down to the ground and rolled few times before stopping. Yi Shiwen, you have thoroughly enraged me. I will burn you to ashes! Xiao Wucheng suddenly got angry. In his hands appeared a whip of fire, and he swept it towards Yi Shiwen. The blazing whip burned all things in its path, and even the air seemed to be burning in its flames. This attack was so fearsome that everything in the surroundings turned to ashes. Yi Zaiwen's stature shot forward like an arrow, his hands transformed into dragon claws, flashing endlessly with divine glory and directly grabbed the whip. Boom! Both of them severely collided in the midair, and suddenly, the air as if exploded under the pressure, setting off shock waves in all directions. The terrible shock wave crushed everything in its path. Even the towering ancient trees in the surrounding area were completely disintegrated. Today, no one can save you from my wrath! Xiao Wucheng coldly stared at Yishiwen. You are free to try, that is if you think you have the skill. Yishiwen smirked and shot an inexhaustible bladiki that cut through the hot waves of fire. Boom! 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 Both experts were going all out, and with each collision, Yi Zaiwen's imposing aura would increase bit a bit. This was an invincible imposing aura when considering the general trend where most experts would find their imposing aura and battle efficiency decreasing in a protracted fight. They not only faced a decrease in physical strength but also the weakening of their mental state. The so-called overbearing characters were not used to losing in a fight and always enjoyed being on the winning side, but this general trend crashed down whenever Yishiwen came into the picture. Because irrespective of whether he was losing or winning, Yi Zaiwen's battle efficiency would always continue to rise dramatically. Yishiwen bravely rushed forward without showing any hesitation or restriction of any kind. Bang! Xiao Wucheng was once again sent flying for several dozen meters before finally dropping to the ground. Although his whole body was covered in flames, but he was still not a match of Yishiwen. His bones were shattered and his chest had caved in. The broken ribs directly punctured his heart, and he spat out blood. This was a battle of life and death, and Xiao Wucheng ended up on the losing side. He had an impressive start but was soon tragically suppressed by Yishiwen. This battle would act like a spark to ignite a rumor about the rise of a truly intrepid expert on the Demon Island. Xiao Wucheng was a prestigious expert but was literally crushed like an ant. Yishiwen gradually stepped towards Xiao Wucheng, arrived near his body, then lifted his foot and stamped on his chest. Bang! Xiao Wucheng's chest region along with his heart and other internal organs were thoroughly crushed and turned into minced meat. The experts, who were observing this battle from afar, were stunned. Xiao Wucheng was dead and the whole Wantru Union was trampled, all this mess caused by just one man. Even the mysterious leader of Wantru Union would never have thought that this could happen to his alliance. The whole Demon Island was going to fall into chaos. After killing Xiao Wucheng, Yishiwen did not stay and turned around to leave, leaving the encampment in fire and ashes. Next day, the whole island was in an uproar when they heard the rumors about how Yishiwen single-handedly routed the Wantru Union and their encampment was now in ruins. Many people did not pay much attention to Yishiwen, but now they had to admit that he was extremely astonishing. Single-handedly crushing an entire alliance was no joke. In fact, no one else on the Demon Island had achieved such a feat. There were several lone experts who were usually at a disadvantage while dealing with the experts affiliated to some alliance. But an alliance facing heavy losses at the hands of a lone expert was simply unheard of. The loss of 2 deputy chiefs was certainly a great loss for an alliance, especially when only one man responsible for killing both. Many experts wanted to join the Wantru Union, but now they chose to give up the idea. After all, they wanted to join this alliance for stability, not for getting massacred by an infamous tyrannical expert. From the past incidents, it was clear to everyone that Yishiwen was not done yet and would surely come back again. And now that the 2 deputy chiefs were out of the picture, Wantru Union was drowned in chaos, and the return of the mysterious leader would make it fall into deeper turmoil. This incident also acted as a warning for other alliances. Now all of the experts knew that they must not provoke Yishiwen at any cost, otherwise, they might end up risking not only their own lives but the fate of their alliance as well. Yishiwen proved a simple point to everyone on the Demon Island, that their so-called alliances and tyrannical leaders could not save them from his wrath if they messed with him. After all, even a major alliance was stripped naked by him. The Wantru Union faced heavy losses, but it was still not completely out of business. It still had a lot of experts who could act as its backbone. After wreaking havoc as he initially planned, Yishiwen went towards the depths of the Demon Island. I cannot come with you because today I am going to look at the source of this yellow river. Why don't you join me? Mu Ling said. In the last 2 months, his cultivation level rose up to the peak of Truth's 7th stage. It seemed like he continued to cultivate in the Yellow River by unceasingly killing the ghost soldiers for the entire 2 months period. The non-stop digestion and absorption helped in an extremely quick progression of his cultivation. This time, when he saw Yishiwen, he thought of him as a trusted companion. Yi Shiwen also thought that since he did not have any other major objective right now, he might as well accompany Mu Ling. Besides, he was also very curious about the source of this yellow river. The two men went along the trail of the river all the way towards the huge ominous mountain. Although there was no trace of ghost soldiers or the yellow river right now, but Mu Ling was very sensitive to the aura of the dead and would not go astray. At nightfall, they finally reached the source of the yellow river. Yi Zaiwen's gaze fell upon an open space with numerous mounds of earth neatly arranged on the ground. Yi Shiwen easily recognized that this piece of land was home to at least hundreds of thousands of graves, and none of these graves were marked with gravestones as if buried in a hurry. Suddenly, a cold feeling arose in his heart. It was too strange for such a vast cemetery to exist on this island. And right after he entered the range of the cemetery, he felt his body stagnating right away. It seemed as if his strength was being completely suppressed. Even though he could move, but right now, he was nothing more than an average human being. Yi Shiwen immediately turned towards Mu Ling and found him in a similar state. To be continued. Chapter 244. NT, third regular release from last week. Chapter 244 Tomb's Slave. Yi Shiwen, I think this place is really strange. Mu Ling frowned and said. Encountering a mass grave in a place like this was unusual. It was easy to guess that something horrible must have happened to these people since this entire graveyard was filled with resentments, and Inchi. NT, Inchi equals negative energy. There were hundreds of thousands of graves without tombstones and indicated the existence of an ancient battlefield. In fact, this scale was way too large for an ordinary battlefield. And when considering the fact that it was located on the Demon Island, which was suspected to be the residence of a tyrannical influence from ancient times, Yi Shiwen was disinclined to believe that this was an ordinary cemetery, not to mention, the trace of Yellow River also vanished here, indicating that this cemetery was actually located at the terminus of the Yellow River and was possibly its source. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a chill running down his spine. I think this is an ancient battlefield, Yi Shiwen said. I guess you are right, Mu Ling said. Otherwise, how can so many people die and leave behind so much resentment? The two men did not know when the clouds were quietly torn open and the starlight from countless stars shone brightly on the graves as if covering the entire cemetery with a pure white cloth. Yi Shiwen took 2 steps forward and felt like he should not stay here for too long, and quickly turned back to leave. Yi Shiwen just stepped near a grave, and suddenly, there erupted an imposing aura from the grave and pounced upon him in the form of a hollow shadow. Yi Shiwen was firmly nailed to the ground by that ghastly aura, and he actually saw a tall figure clad in armor. The ghostly figure looked strong and was giving off the aura of a worthy opponent that possessed a brave heart. Yi Shiwen felt his own spirit being locked down, and this made him unable to think properly. But at this time, the golden divinity instantly burst out of his body and freed his mind and soul. Yi Shiwen quickly got up and jumped to the side. But at this time, both Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling saw a kind of strange yellow liquid emerging from the ground. They could sense the aura associated with it, and realized that it was flowing out of the hell. Their eyes caught a strange scene where in the dim light of the starry night, the yellow liquid slowly began to overflow from the graves and the endless streams joined together to create the yellow river that galloped towards the horizon, making its way through the initial trace of Yellow River. The Yellow River also packed the lingering resentments, and Inchi along with it as it flowed away from the cemetery, and these resentments slowly took the forms of ghost soldiers. The ghost soldiers roared and marched in the river as if living their lives once again. Yi Shiwen could not help but feel somewhat uncomfortable in the face of the terrifying auras of Inchi and Deadki that shot up to the sky. The Inchi and Deadki were extremely terrible, moreover, they intertwined in the sky and began a tangled warfare. This swept off dreadful aura in all directions as if to subjugate anyone in its path. Perhaps, it could sweep away the entire Zhongwu if this island's space was not sealed. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen sensed something and turned his head to see a trembling old man coming out from the woods. Both Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling were immediately startled. After all, they had already lost their battle efficiencies in this cemetery, and the sudden emergence of this uncanny old man could be a sign of danger. Even in his past life, Yishiwen would not call such a shady old man harmless, not to mention, in this world, one simply could not judge a person by their appearance. Well, 50 years have passed. The old man sighed loudly and slowly arrived in front of the two men. He walked through the yellow river but was strangely not at all affected. This old man was giving them goosebumps. After all, he just crossed the yellow river like it was nothing. He did not even wrap his feet with jinyuan like Mu Ling, for preventing the corrosion. This old man was giving off an immeasurably deep aura and simply disregarded dead qi and yellow water while walking towards Yishiwen and Mu Ling. In fact, even the ghost soldiers directly made way and did not dare to approach him. "Who are you?" Yishiwen asked. "You asked my name. It's been too long, already forgotten. You can call me Tomb's slave," the old man said slowly. "Tomb's slave? Another 50 years have passed, I presume. Just hope that this time, someone can do it," the Tomb's slave said with a sigh. "Heaven can be unfair sometimes." Yishiwen was confused, but he felt that this was somehow related to the bell that rang only once in 50 years. The old man looked at Yishiwen and said, I want to ask you. Can you do a task for me? Please tell." Yishiwen said respectfully but felt somewhat weird. This old man's cultivation was simply unfathomable but wanted him to do something for him. Was there really a task that he could not accomplish? "Due to some special reasons, I cannot leave this place and want you two to do a task for me. Naturally, you two will receive great rewards," the tomb slave said in a monotonous manner. "May I know what this task is all about?" Yishiwen asked. "See that holy mountain over there? There is a sacred immortal palace named Peak Palace above that mountain, and there is a seal affixed at its peak. If you can bring over that seal to me, then you will receive my legacy," the old man said. Legacy. Yishiwen did not know what the old man meant by that, but this tomb slave's heritage was bound to be incredible. "It is good that you know Phoenix regeneration technique." After a moment of silence, the old man said again and shocked Yishiwen all of a sudden. The old man actually saw through Yishiwen and his secrets. The cultivation level of this old man was simply beyond the imagination of this mortal world. However, Yishiwen somewhat hesitated to take up this mission because according to what the tomb slave said, this immortal palace was apparently located atop that ominous mountain from where he had heard terrifying shrieks when he first stepped on this island. What if this so-called seal was placed to imprison those terrifying creatures? If those things were allowed to go out of this island, then it would be a huge disaster for Jinwu Jie. The old man looked at Yishiwen and as if understood what he was thinking, but did not get mad, rather commendably smiled at him and said, "Rest assured, kid. It is true that I want to fulfill my tens of thousands of years old wish of getting that seal, but you do not need to worry because that seal is not placed to bind them. I am not cruel enough to endanger the fate of the entire world for the sake of selfish desires. Indeed, it's true that the heaven has played tricks with me, but everything occurs for some reason," the old man said, and Yishiwen sensed that there was endless sadness in his voice. "Such being the case, I'm willing to do this task," Yishiwen said, "but the point is that I may not be able to deal with those creatures." Mu Ling nodded as he was also aware of the risk involved in this mission since the creatures on that ominous mountain were really too fearful, not to mention, even the experts of legendary realm might not be able to deal with them. "Since I chose you two, I will naturally not send you to your deaths. Soon, there comes a short span of time that appears once in a millennium when all of the souls on that holy mountain will be in their most weakened state, then you will have the opportunity to get that seal. Remember, you will have only 1 hour's time to retrieve that seal. If you are unable to get out of there in time, then..." The tomb slave did not say further, but Yishiwen knew what he meant. "It's something dangerous, so it is up to you whether you want to go or not," the tomb slave said. Yishiwen's brain began to think crazily. He had a powerful technique like Phoenix regeneration, and if he succeeded, then he would receive some formidable reward from the old man. And it should not be inferior to Phoenix regeneration, so the temptation was naturally immense. But the danger involved was also immense. Needless to say, The old man did not hide the risk involved in this mission, but there was still a chance of success. After all, it was an opportunity that appeared only once in a millennium. Yi Shiwen did not feel any malice from this old man. At this time, Mu Ling asked, "Why doesn't the senior go himself to retrieve the seal? It should be an easy task for you." "No, I cannot go." The old man shook his head and said, "I have made a pledge to defend this cemetery for eternity. As long as I am alive, I cannot leave this place, and perhaps not even after death." Yi Shiwen was shocked when he heard this. What could force an expert of such profound level to stay here as a gravekeeper? "It's something that you can do, but whether you want to do it or not is something you have to decide," the old man said. "Otherwise, I don't mind waiting for another 50 years. Yi Shiwen immediately made a speculation. A bell rings once in every 50 years on the Demon Island to summon young geniuses. Are these two matters somehow related? And if this old man had continued to choose people each time the island opened for a new group of young geniuses, generation after generations, then how many people had already set foot on this island? Certainly, many of them must have accepted this task, but that seal had still not been retrieved by anyone. This explained that all those who tried to retrieve it were dead. To be continued. Chapter 245. NT, fourth regular release from last week. Chapter 245. Weak mentality. After making this inference, Yi Shiwen could not help but feel horror in his heart. Super geniuses like Qi Fifan must have been summoned to this demon island, and countless peerless geniuses might have accepted this mission, but no one was successful. Moreover, just the mention of Peak Palace's name was enough to shock him. Last time he went to an immortal palace, he got a mighty technique like Phoenix regeneration that simply defied the heavens. Each time he went to such places, he felt as if he was venturing into a prehistoric era, making him feel like he was in a mythical age. He was getting similar vibes when he set foot on this island, and now, he was discovering weird places all over the island. When he was on the earth, although he was not a big man of mythology, but he was still quite familiar with this stuff. However, before those were all just myths and he did not need to find sense in any of them, but now the situation was different. Yi Shiwen knew that there were many formidable forces in this world. The Heavenly Sector, the Devil World, the Hell, the Dragon Clan, and recently he found out about the existence of Phoenix Clan, and so on. Yi Shiwen was quite surprised to hear familiar legends in this world as they used to be in his past life. The similarities were enough to sometimes scare him, and now he found several clues regarding those myths on this island. "I do not force you to do this task for me. Before leaving the island, you can come here to find me," the old man said and slowly walked towards the depths of the cemetery. Yi Shiwen looked this elderly figure slowly disappear. The rumor about how Yi Shiwen slaughtered the two deputy chiefs of Wan Tru Union set off a storm on the entire island and shook everyone. Wan Tru Union's mysterious leader finally made an appearance, and the members of the alliance began to clamor. "Yi Shiwen is simply nothing. As long as our chief goes into action, he can kill him instantly by raising just one hand." To verify whether the rumor about the demise of the two deputy chiefs was true, an alliance dared to provoke the mysterious leader by attacking the Wan Tru Union's members in his absence. This alliance made the biggest mistake of thinking that there was actually no mysterious leader of Wan Tru Union. However, as a result of that, the mysterious leader personally went to the encampment of that alliance and killed each and every member. This worked to deter the entire Demon Island and remind everyone about the true status of Wan Tru Union. Eagle Union's chief Warhawk once commented that Wan Qingyao was an expert of truth 8th stage, moreover the most outstanding among the experts of the same level. And he was strong enough to kill any disciple on the Demon Island if he desired. In this case, both Yi Shiwen and merciless Wan Qingyao became the subject of gossip throughout the Demon Island. Many people were talking about the collision between these two and how fearful that duel would be. Wan Qingyao's sudden appearance was not contrary to everyone's expectations. In fact, now they were waiting for Yi Ziwen's death that would end this entire ruckus. However, how to kill Yi Shiwen? Even an idiot would know that finding Yixuan on such a vast island was extremely difficult. When everyone thought that Wan Qingyao would soon give up, he finally made his move. On this island, all the forces related to Yixuan shall be destroyed. Wan Qingyao's indifferent announcement spread throughout the Demon Island. That day, he led his forces to the encampment of Great Yu State's Tianfeng Union. There were more than 24 disciples in the encampment. Not all of them belonged to the Tianfeng Hall. Some belonged to relatively unknown sects of Great Yu State who had also joined Tianfeng Union. But in the end, Tianfeng Union was not very strong. The powerhouses of various alliances also arrived there to see what would happen to the Tianfeng Union. My God, Wan True Union is really going to attack the Tianfeng Union. Even if a lot of powerhouses have been killed by Yixuan, the Wan True Union is still very formidable. Is this the end of Tianfeng Union? Many experts were observing from afar and saw a man clad in a black robe, standing high in the air and coldly looking at Tianfeng Union's encampment. This Wan True Union really plans to destroy an entire alliance? What do they think of us weak alliances? Do they think we are like the meat on a chopping board? A disciple said. There was anger in his voice along with dissatisfaction. They were supposed to be peerless geniuses of the younger generation, and now they were going to be killed for no reason whatsoever. Rumors are that this is Wan Qingyao's decision, and he is at Truth 8th stage. Although his cultivation is not extraordinary in the outside world where there are tens of thousands of experts at his level, but now on the Demon Island, who can be his match? The Tianfeng Union and Yixuan are not at all related. Wan Qingyao is planning to destroy them just because they come from the same state as Yixuan. Soon he will come for us because we are also the experts from the southeast region like Yixuan. An expert said in a frustrated tone. His men are human beings and we are not. Why is he treating us like livestock? Now they truly felt that strength was the ultimate justice in this world. Just because Wan Qingyao was a tyrannical expert, he could do anything on a whim and others would have no choice but to suffer. In the end, he could do things that they could not do. Is he not scared that Tianfeng Hall will take revenge for this? Someone asked. Things that happen on the Demon Island cannot involve the outside world. This rule has been handed down since ancient times, otherwise, why would Yixuan dare to recklessly kill experts from various sects? And we should not forget that Wan Qingyao is actually a very ruthless man. Moreover, the strength of Wan Qingyao's sect is far above that of the Tianfeng Hall. Today, Tianfeng Hall is going to face heavy losses. Do you think Yixuan will appear? Certainly not. His strength is comparable to Truth's 7th stage. How can he be a match of Wan Qingyao, who is presently at the peak of Truth 8th peak? Moreover, Wan Qingyao is using this method to compel him to appear. Today, I'm going to destroy Tianfeng Union of Great Yu State. If Yixuan does not appear, then as the days pass, more and more people, related to him, shall die. Wan Qingyao said in an overbearing manner, and his imposing aura spread out in all directions. The members of Tianfeng Union did not pretend not to see and immediately rushed out in abundance. Let's fight with them. They are going too far. Kill. The bloody carnage began and should be called one-sided slaughter. The disciples of Tianfeng Union did not get a chance to either resist or escape and were thoroughly crushed by the Wan True Union. Only a few powerful members of Tianfeng Union along with their leader were able to escape with serious injuries. The Tianfeng Union simply did not get a chance to fight back and its members were directly massacred. This time, Wan True Union finally managed to restore their prestige that was initially trampled by Yixuan. Although someone else's blood had to flow for this, but the Wan True Union still got admiration for their might and ruthlessness. This was truly a sinister method of slaughtering people who were not at all personally related to Yixuan. They are using a vicious method. Yixuan sighed with emotion and said, Yixuan received the news, and already after 3 days he had been in the depths of the Demon Island and practicing gilded tyrant form. His upper body was fully covered with a golden protective layer, and once he would perfect the gilded tyrant form, his new battle efficiency would be enough to deal with an expert of Truth 8th stage, even without himself stepping into the Truth 7th stage. It seems you cannot reason with this mysterious leader. He is actually pushing everyone against you. Yi Mo's voice appeared in his mind. Wan Qingyao is very formidable, Yi Shiwen said, because he truly was not a match of that guy. Wan Qingyao's threat was understandable. After all, Yi Shiwen destroyed his alliance's encampment, killed his men, and also killed his 2 deputy chiefs. His hate for Yi Shiwen was inevitable. Although this way of thinking was abnormal, but certainly not how a weak person would think. A weak person would try to find Area Sun behind Yi Ziwen's actions, but Wan Qingyao did not want to waste time on that. Yi Shiwen was already his target, and nothing would stop him from destroying his target. In Yi Ziwen's past life, some people would steadily make concessions while facing enemy provocations because they thought that just because the other side was being aggressive, there was no need for them to behave similarly. However, they never thought that just because they stepped back, their action worked towards encouraging the aggressor to continue using this method on others as well. Just because Yi Shiwen had come from that kind of environment, he understood how to deal with this man. Perhaps not all people would agree to Yi Shiwen's way of doing things. Because Wan Qingyao is too strong, so in the end, I am the one at fault for not being able to protect others, Yi Shiwen said, since it was a fact that all those people died because of him. You must not go out, or you will simply be falling into his trap. You are not his match, Yi Mo said. This is exactly what he wants you to act rashly. To be continued. Chapter 246. NT, first regular chapter for the week. Chapter 246, Approaching War. You must not go out, or you will simply be falling into his trap. You are not his match, Yi Mo said. This is exactly what he wants you to act rashly. Wan Qingyao was much stronger than Jiang Hua and Xiao Wucheng. And he was much smarter as well. Yi Shiwen planned to stay low and appear only when he was strong enough to deal with the enemy. But now, Wan Qingyao's tactic was forcing Yi Shiwen to come out, and if he did, he might fall under the wind. Yi Shiwen was most disgusted from people like Wan Qingyao who used their own potential to oppress and manipulate others and could go to any extent to achieve their goals. When Wan Qingyao noticed that Yi Shiwen was not coming out no matter how much he waited, he used this seemingly innocuous method to bully and kill unrelated people and turn everyone against Yi Shiwen. Wan Qingyao had long sacrificed his moral values and no longer valued human life. That was the reason why he could come up with such a vicious method. I know, Yi Shiwen nodded and said. And I'm more afraid that if he alone can do so much damage, what if someone else joined him in his plans? Then the whole situation will become even worse. For example, the 8th prince. Yi Ziwen's fears soon became reality. Only a month later, the 8th finally made his first appearance on the Demon Island. Moreover, using his identity as the 8th prince of Great Yu State, he was leading an alliance of young geniuses of the royal clan and from Yunqing City. The Imperial Union announced a joint hunt with the Wan Tru Union to capture Yi Shiwen. Moreover, Yi Shiwen heard a rumor that Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen had fallen into the hands of the 8th prince. Yi Shiwen did not care much about the destruction of Tianfeng Union, but he cared about Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen because they were his comrades, not to mention, he was repeatedly helped by Hua Menghan. He must save them at any cost. Yi Shiwen still remained missing for another month. Wan Tru Union and Imperial Union finally made their move and openly declared that their next target would be Shuling sect. If Yi Shiwen did not appear, then they would start the raid 3 days later. The people who were familiar with the internal affairs of Great Yu State immediately understood that the 8th prince was using Wan Tru Union to eradicate the younger generation of Shuling sect. Then, he would be one step closer to his plan of dominating the Great Yu State. Everyone knew that Yi Yuan's school had not produced peerless geniuses after Qi Fifan. In fact, only 3 were summoned this time. And among them, only Yi Shiwen could be considered a threat to the 8th prince's plans. The younger generation of Tianfeng Hall had already been destroyed, leaving only a few who escaped with serious injuries. Yunqing City was always a supporter of the royal clan. Now one major force was out of the picture, and this meant that the power balance of Great Yu State was now in the hands of remaining 4 major forces. The remaining 2 sects standing in the way of the 8th prince were Yuan school and Shuling sect. He just needed to destroy the younger generation of these 2 sects to fulfill his goals. But even if people knew about this, there was no way to stop Wan True Union and Imperial Union. After all, their leaders were tyrannical experts of truth 8th stage. Facing one expert of truth 8th stage was asking too much, and there were 2 of them looking to kill Yi Shiwen. The rumors were that after 3 days, they would not only crush Shuling Union but also perform the public execution of Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen. If this really happened and Yi Shiwen did not show up, then one could imagine the kind of reputation he would have in the future. Moreover, this might leave a permanent scar on Yi Ziwen's mind and hinder his further development. Even if he did not die, the lack of development potential would turn him into an average expert without courage and ambition. Afterward, he would be called a dedicated, invincible expert that was wounded forever. The cold moonlight was spread over a mountain peak. A few months gone, I never thought that the 8th prince has reached the peak of truth 8th stage, indeed fearful. Yi Shiwen was standing on the mountain peak and looking into the distance. He once defeated the 8th prince but in a same-level fight. If the battle did not take place in front of Yuan school, then the 8th prince would have never agreed to have a seal placed on his level. The 8th prince was indeed a formidable opponent, and it could be said that his strength was almost comparable to that of Wan Qingyao. Yi Shiwen did not have a shred of fear, only a bit of excitement before the war. "Is this 8th prince very strong?" Mu Ling's voice sounded from the side. Yi Shiwen was going to face 2 major alliances and told Mu Ling, who immediately put down the practice to help his friend. "Very strong!" Yi Shiwen nodded. Mu Ling was surprised as he looked at Yi Shiwen. Although he did not know Yi Shiwen for a long time but knew that he never talked irresponsibly. If Yi Shiwen said that the 8th prince was very strong, then he had to be very strong. "If given the chance, I want to fight him." Mu Ling's face flashed with excitement. "You won't get a chance because this time, I am going to kill him," Yi Shiwen said, and a trace of firm and resolute look appeared on his face. Last time, Yi Shiwen was unable to kill him, but he wouldn't be so lucky this time. "It is really a pity." Mu Ling was aware of his own strength, and knew that he would not lose to anyone on the same level, but both Wan Qingyao and 8th prince were 1 level above him. He really regretted that he was not at the truth 8th stage because he wanted to fight with those 2 tyrannical experts. "But can you really beat them?" Mu Ling asked. He knew that Yi Shiwen was strong, but he could not ignore the capability of those 2. Moreover, if Yi Shiwen was at truth 8th stage, then the whole thing would have been a lot easier. But he was still at the peak of truth 6th stage, and there was a difference of 2 levels between him and his enemies. "I do not have another choice," Yi Shiwen said and spread out his hand. His whole body was instantly covered with a golden protective layer, making him look like a golden god of war. In this moment, even the moon and the stars lost their color in front of his shining golden body, as if he was the incarnation of the sun itself. He had perfected the gilded tyrant form. This whole month, Yi Shiwen naturally did not do anything else but continued to kill demon beasts and absorb their divinities to strengthen the gilded tyrant form. The most important thing he did to complete the gilded tyrant form was to take a big risk of stealing the egg of Supreme Tyrannosaurus. He was chased for 5 days and nights by this monster of legendary realm and was almost killed several times. He was also split in half and dismembered a few times, but fortunately, he had phoenix regeneration. Otherwise he would have died back then. But the risk was worth it, since after digesting the divinity contained in the egg, he finally perfected the gilded tyrant form. After perfecting the gilded tyrant form, now, his battle efficiency was only slightly less than that of an expert of truth 8th stage. At least now he would not need to retreat, though he could only expect a desperate fight. "Your task is to pin down the experts of the 2 alliances. Leave Wan Qingyao and that 8th prince to me," Yi Shiwen said. "As long as those 2 men do not interfere, even the experts of Shuling Union can take care of the other experts. I will prefer to lend you a hand," Mu Ling said, and was willing to remain at his friend's side no matter where the path would take them. "No," Yi Shiwen shook his head. Now on the Demon Island, perhaps only I can kill them both. If I cannot do it, then no one can. Yi Shiwen was so confident because he could feel the sudden power surge within his body after perfecting the gilded tyrant form. He did not suspect Mu Ling's ability. If he was an expert of Truth 8th stage, then he would not be inferior to them. Now we must prepare for the upcoming war, Yi Shiwen said. He wanted to cultivate Jinyuan for the next 3 days to restore his strength. The Supreme Tyrannosaurus was too fearful and injured him so badly and so many times that his vitality was hurt in the process. Even with Phoenix regeneration, it would take time to regenerate his lost vitality. Although his battle efficiency would not suffer with the loss of vitality, but his endurance would suffer considerably. Thankfully, 3 days were enough to cultivate vitality with the help of Phoenix regeneration. 3 days passed quickly and the raid finally began on the Shuling Union. To be continued. Chapter 247. NT. Second regular chapter for the week. Chapter 247. Battle with the two tyrants. In the early morning, the Imperial Union and the Wantru Union arrived at the encampment of Shuling Union to begin the punitive expedition. In addition, almost 1,000 other disciples also came to observe the battle. The 8th prince was standing in midair. Clad in a royal robe, he looked like an absolute tyrant who seemed all prepared to dominate the entire world. Right now, he was looking indifferently towards the members of Shuling Union. In his opinion, these people were actually the rebels and he must either tame them or eradicate them. Wan Qingyao was standing at his side and looked even more vicious, as if he was not looking at humans but ants. Yi Shiwen, come out to die! The 8th prince coldly said and glanced towards the crowd of experts that had come to observe, as if to recognize Yi Ziwen's face. At this time, Wan Qingyao said, "Let's begin. If he doesn't want to come out, we will compel him to come out. Attack!" The 8th prince issued the command and disciples of the two alliances rushed towards the disciples of Shuling Union to exterminate them. The disciples of Imperial Union mostly consisted of Imperial guards who were trained to eradicate any and all obstacles from the path of the 8th prince. Boom! 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 Suddenly, there came noise of intermittent fearful explosions, and those disciples who crashed in the encampment found themselves trapped inside a scarlet-colored jinarei. They were now firmly surrounded from all sides. Some disciples screamed pitifully, and their bodies disintegrated on the spot. The spilled blood was directly absorbed by the array and took the shape of an evil blood god. It curled up the corners of its mouth to reveal an evil grin, and a blood-red spear appeared in its hand. The evil blood god threw the spear that branched out into numerous spears and instantly nailed several disciples to the ground. "Not good, we fell into their trap!" a disciple shouted in panic. At this time, the 8th prince's complexion slightly changed as he said, "Damn, this is Shuling Union's trap. Mu Yuran!" The 8th prince clenched his teeth. "Did you think that the Shuling Union will just sit back and do nothing?" A strange voice sounded from the direction of Shuling Union's encampment, and a blood-red figure flew out of there. "I will terminate your followers. Your dream of world domination can go to hell." The young man in a blood-red robe with somewhat pale complexion said in a cold voice as he viciously stared at the enemy. It was Mu Yuran, the super geniuses from the younger generation of Shuling sect. "You are courting death, you must blame Yi Shiwen for this. You are suffering because he did not show up." The 8th prince gritted his teeth and shouted, "You think you can deceive me?" Mu Yuran said disdainfully, "This low-level trick doesn't fool me. Give up on your whole brainwash plan and don't even bother acting friendly. No need to talk nonsense with him. I will break this array right away." Wan Chengyao could not see his men getting killed in front of his eyes. "I am already here. Are you blind or something, cannot see me?" A cold voice resounded throughout the sky and a huge blade light suddenly swept towards Wan Qingyao. Wan Qingyao sneered and his hands spread out to form a layer of divine light that instantly annihilated the blade light. "Yi Shiwen, you finally came to meet your death?" the 8th prince said, and a crazed look appeared in his eyes. "I give him to you." Wan Qingyao looked at the 8th prince and said, then advanced toward the Shuling array. Boom! Yi Shiwen shot his palm. A giant golden dragon flew towards Wan Qingyao and blocked his path. Did I say you can go? Yi Shiwen indifferently said. At this time, Mu Ling vanished from the side of Yi Shiwen and appeared in front of Yinqing City's top genius named Jian Wuchen. You showed up today and made the biggest mistake of your life. He'll never let you run away again. The 8th prince ferociously said. You are quite the tactician, aren't you? Yi Shiwen smirked and said. You used me as a reason to eradicate your competitors. That's really a good plan. So long as I can kill you, I don't mind going to any limits. The 8th prince's face revealed an evil smile. Kill me? You really do like to joke around, don't you? Did you forget how I nailed you to the ground like a dead dog? If that old guy hadn't come to save your sorry ass, I would have tortured you to death. Well, I'd like to see who is going to save you today. Yi Shiwen smiled, but each and every word that came out of his mouth hit the bullseye. Your elder sealed my power, otherwise, I would have defeated you easily. But today, I will use my full power to kill you. The 8th prince's heart was instantly filled with monstrous rage and ferocity. He was confident because today he could display his full power, and after obtaining the heritage of 4 sacred beast sect, his power and skill had progressed by leaps and bounds. He completely forgot the fact that in the last duel, Yi Shiwen used to at the peak of truth 4th stage, and even after his own level was sealed, he was still at small truth level. I wanted the 8th prince to deal with you, but since you are so eager to die, I will first kill you. Wan Qingyao coldly glared at the man who slaughtered his 2 deputy chiefs. An invincible imposing aura burst out of his body as if he was the true supreme existence in this world. The 8th prince's imposing aura also broke out. He was truly worthy of his reputation. And from the wretched expression on his face, one could see that he would resort to all means as long as they served his purpose. Not to mention, he planned to team up with Wan Qingyao to slaughter Yi Shiwen. If you think you can stop us and allow Shuling guys to kill our men, you're too naive. I can radically kill you with a flick of my hand. Wan Qingyao sneered. Then why don't you try? Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry because this was the time for the enemy to be anxious. With passing time, their men were getting slaughtered inside the Shuling array. The spectators were shocked because they clearly saw that Yi Shiwen had little to no chance of winning. Battling 2 experts of truth 8th peak simultaneously was simply insane. Is he insane? How does he plan to fight those 2? I think he is trying to stall for time so that the large array of Shuling Union can sweep clean the disciples of the 2 major alliances. Everyone was aware of the fearfulness of those 2 tyrants, and one would need boundless courage and willpower to face both of them simultaneously. I don't think so. At this time, Warhawk crossed his hands behind the back and solemnly said, I sense heavy murderous aura from Yi Shiwen. He actually plans to kill them. The surrounding disciples were left stunned when they heard this. According to them, fighting even one was insane, but according to Warhawk, Yi Shiwen was all set to kill both? Was such a thing really possible? These 2 tyrants were existences of truth 8th peak. The news about Yi Zaiwen's battle with those 2 was enough to attract this island's celebrities like Warhawk, Ji Moon and Wang Purple to come here to watch the battle. Wan Qingyao waved his blade and a dazzling long blade light went across the sky towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not reveal any expression on his face, just instantly covered his whole body with a layer of Jinyuan and golden divinity. Then, the long blade danced in his hand and shot a fluctuating blade light to welcome the incoming attack. ZZ! ZZ! Boom! 2 blade lights collided and mutually devoured each other, setting off endless blast waves in all directions. The surrounding forest was directly wiped out by the aftermath of this blast. A grim smile appeared on the 8th prince's face as he took out his spear and shot terrifying spear shadows towards Yi Shiwen. Shwa! Yi Shiwen waved his long blade horizontally and blocked this peerless spear attack. The battle has started! Some people exclaimed. Yi Shiwen was showing no signs of falling under the wind, even if he was facing attacks from the 2 tyrant experts. This made people feel as if their heads would explode with bafflement. What the hell was going on? However, there were many people who thought that Yi Shiwen should not fall under the wind from the beginning. After all, if that happened, then there was no point in coming to observe this battle. Although people thought that Yi Shiwen was audacious, but no one thought of him as an idiot. Right when the 8th prince's spear attack was blocked by Yi Shiwen, Wan Qingyao instantly released a much larger blade light than before. As Yi Shiwen expected, these two tyrants seemed to be in a hurry and wanted to finish this fight as quickly as possible. After all, if their elite men were exterminated inside the Shuling array, then what would happen to their aggressive dominance? The two tyrants would end up being loners on this island. Boom! After a terrifying collision, both sides continually withdrew several steps. Yi Zaiwen's gilded tyrant body was vibrating right now. Its defense was truly tyrannical, but Yi Zaiwen's level was not enough to simultaneously deal with two experts from 2 levels above. In fact, the two tyrants were shocked to no limit, especially the 8th prince. His eyes were full of disbelief because he never expected that Yi Shiwen would display such a progress. He got the heritage of 4 sacred beasts and managed to reach the peak of truth 8th stage so quickly. But what kind of heritage Yi Shiwen obtained to progress so fast, and that too at such a young age? It was obvious that Yi Shiwen really defeated him when it came to cultivation progress speed. Die! Thinking of this, an endless killing intention spread in the 8th prince's bloodshot eyes. To be continued. Chapter 248. NT, 3rd regular chapter for the week. Chapter 248. Fight with Fate. Mu Ling was facing Jian Wuchang. Jian Wuchang had a dignified appearance, although he was clad in simple attire and his face had an indifferent expression, but no one would dare to underestimate him. He had an absolute heroic aura. Get out of the way. Jian Wuchang was a man of few words and did not have any favorable impression of the 8th prince, but being a disciple of Yinqing City, he had no other choice. He received the order from an elder of his sect to follow the 8th prince's commands. Yi Shiwen also glanced at his opponents and did not give the slightest indication of losing this battle. If he was defeated, then who would save the disciples of Shuling Union? After all, they were using up their entire strength in maintaining such a massive array. Impossible! Mu Ling said and shot a glance at Yi Shiwen. But he was relieved to see that Yi Shiwen had not fallen under the wind. Jian Wuchang did not want to fight, but since Mu Ling was not ready to step aside, he had no choice but to engage in battle. He instantly waved his sword and released a rippling sword key that went across the sky, churning the clouds all the way, and descended upon Mu Ling. Jian Wuchang did not hesitate from using one of his best attacks on Mu Ling. Meanwhile, Mu Ling also did not hold back and displayed his best sword skill. Since his practice was based on consumption of dead ki, his sword attack was bound to be gloomy and ghastly. The whole sky as if trembled when these two sword attacks collided and set off storms in all directions. The spectators trembled when the strong auras of these two sword geniuses spread everywhere. Though their battle was not as outstanding as the battle between Yi Shiwen and the two tyrants, but there was not much difference either. After all, they were just one stage below. There were only a few experts of Truth's 7th stage on the Demon Island, so no one would dare to look down on them. Boom! 2 massive streams of sword ki severely collided and set off waves of a hellish aura in the surroundings. Jian Wuchang was a rare sword genius that appeared once in a century, but Mu Ling was also an unusual expert, and his powers were derived directly from hell. Suddenly, there appeared 2 diagrams in the sky, each representing the practiced sword intention of the 2 sword geniuses. It could be seen that both sword intentions were at the acme level, and as soon as they collided, they began to devour each other and resulted in a fearful competition between their respective ideal conditions. Boom! 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 The intensity of this battle was obviously inferior to the battle going on between Yi Shiwen and the 2 tyrants. Jian Wuchang's main motive was to save his fellow disciples of Yinqing City who were trapped inside the Shuling array, but Mu Ling promised Yi Shiwen that he would absolutely not allow anyone to pass. Ay. Inside the Shuling array, the evil blood god's spears were nailing the experts on the ground one by one. Mu Yuren was smiling and seemed very happy. He felt proud and elated while the disciples of the Imperial Union and the Wan True Union were crying pitifully. Almost everyone thought that this was going to be the end of Shuling Sect's younger generation. After all, why would Yi Shiwen show up and risk his life for the sake of some strangers? And even if he did, the Eighth Prince would not put a hold on his plan of getting rid of Shuling Sect's younger generation. There was an evil smile on Mu Yuren's face, because after this battle, who would dare to underestimate the Shuling Union? Boom! The Eighth Prince's shot a glorious spurky which as if pierced through the sky and was firmly locked on Yi Shiwen. Clang! Wan Qingyao's blade instantly released a dazzling blade light that went howling towards Yi Shiwen. Two scary attacks were rushing towards Yi Shiwen, and everyone thought that he could certainly not withstand them. In fact, withstanding even one would be a miracle, let alone two. The earth-shattering attacks bulldozed numerous trees and set off air explosions everywhere. Boom! Yi Zaiwen's long blade congealed a huge dragon that immediately rushed out. A terrible blast swept off after the collision, but Yi Shiwen did not move one bit. The aftermath and complementary waves of this world-shattering collision did not affect him at all. His incomparably tyrannical golden body was simply not budged by anything, and he continued to stand right where he was, with peerless self-confidence. Get out of the way. Compared to the Eighth Prince, Wan Qingyao was much more concerned about his men and did not want them to die. There was a surge of dreadful energy that completely erupted from his body all of a sudden and rushed towards Yi Shiwen like a sea of moving mountains of light. The Bladiki was rushing towards Yi Shiwen like surging waves of the sea, and at this time, the Eighth Prince also shot a deadly spear attack that released a dragon. It seemed as if a dragon was lurking in the waves, sometimes soaring up, sometimes diving in the waves. This scene was exceptionally awe-inspiring. Yi Zaiwen's eyes revealed intense killing intention, aimed at both of these tyrants. If Wan Qingyao's Bladiki was like waves of the sea, then Yi Zaiwen's Bladiki was sharp enough to cleave those waves. Yi Shiwen was able to sweep away any attack aimed at him, regardless of how vast and massive those attacks might be. At this time, the tyrannical might of gilded tyrant form fully manifested and golden Jinyuan started to boil within Yi Zaiwen's body. He appeared like a golden god of war, standing motionless in the raging waves of Bladiki like an iron mountain. No matter how mighty those waves might be, were unable to move him even a step back. Yi Shiwen knew that this was not yet the most tragic phase of the battle. But his gilded tyrant form had also not been fully released either. He is really fighting with two tyrannical experts, and is not pressed under the wind. Indeed, how is he able to block their joint attacks? This Yi Shiwen is too weird. Even if he dies today, he will still become a legend. It's still early to make such speculations, Warhawk said while observing the battle from sidelines. This is just the beginning, and it's hard to say which side will come out as victorious. Ji Moon Ji and Wang Purple nodded. Their visions were naturally not like ordinary people. The Great Yu State has given a lot of elites to this world. The Eighth Prince, Yi Shiwen and Mu Yuren are all peerless elites, Warhawk said, because it was not hidden from him that almost 100 experts were summoned from Great Yu State. Yi Yuan's school was famous for the shortage of elites in their younger generation, but Yi Shiwen alone was more than enough to compensate. The battle suddenly entered into the most intense phase. Yi Zaiwen's long blade released a sword intention that was faintly glowing with fluctuating world laws. Yi Shiwen was slowly revealing his cards. Now, each and every one of his blade attacks transformed into ruthless sword intention and also contained the ideal condition practiced by him to the Acme level. Clang! Boom! An enormous sword intention rushed across the sky and advanced towards the two tyrants. The Eighth Prince and Wan Qingyao also resorted to their strongest attacks. Wan Qingyao's blade released endless waves of Bladiki that seemed to be burdening the entire world. The Eighth Prince's spear also released an endless barrage of spurki. Boom! The blast swept out in all directions. Even the atoms cracked open in this terrible collision that formed a blossoming mushroom cloud rising into the sky. Yi Zaiwen's hair was flying crazily in the wind. He did not stop even for a second and immediately waved his long blade, releasing a fearful blade light that went across the sky and collided with the enemy's joint attack. Boom! 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 The aftermath of the explosion crushed everything in the surroundings, sweeping away mountain peaks and the forest. Even the universe seemed to be collapsing in its wake. The two sides once again indulged in a superheated battle. Everyone's eyes were dazzled by this scene. They never expected to see such an intense battle. In fact, even the experts of Truth 8th stage would call the level of this battle extremely tyrannical. This was a rare opportunity to witness such a battle, and if lost, then might not get another one. The battle was finally arriving in its most tragic phase. Shwa! Yi Zaiwen's long blade clashed with the 8th prince's spear, and the terrifying rippling energy waves swept towards a mountain peak and smashed it to pieces. But, at this time, the suppression world law attached at the tip of the spear swept forward and pierced into Yi Zaiwen's body. Puchi! His golden blood splashed out, and he quickly went several steps back to avoid the next section of this attack. He is finally injured. Is this it? Is this the end of his fight with the fate? A disciple shouted excitedly. The 8th prince roared, and his tall body pressed down towards Yishiwen like a boundless mountain. This was the right moment to end this battle. He saw an opening in Yi Zaiwen's defenses and must make the final strike immediately to finish him off once and forever. You will die. No one is going to save you today. The 8th prince sneered and swept his spear, setting off a terrible storm that transformed into a mass of light and rushed towards Yishiwen. To be continued. Chapter 249. NT, fourth and last regular chapter for the week. Chapter 249. The 8th prince nailed to the ground. You will die. No one is going to save you today. The 8th prince sneered and swept his spear, setting off a terrible storm that transformed into a mass of light and rushed towards Yishiwen. If Gilded Tyrant Form's defense was not truly tyrannical, then Yishiwen would have already been defeated a long time ago. The spear thrust forward like a dragon, directly towards Yishiwen. Puchi! The 8th prince's spear accurately pierced through the belly of Yishiwen. Yishiwen spat a mouthful of blood, and the blood also oozed out of the wound on his belly. This battle had already resulted in the destruction of the surrounding forest. Yishiwen immediately grabbed the spear with his hands, and the Gilded Tyrant Form activated to its extreme. Yi Zaiwen's might was so greatly strengthened that the 8th prince never expected that he would not be able to pull out the spear from his body. While still clutching the spear with his hands, a spiraling golden energy surged out of his body and transformed into a huge dragon. It soared into the sky and instantly crashed into the 8th prince's body. Bang! The 8th prince was instantly sent flying. This attack was so terrifying that some of the bones in his body were broken, and he suddenly spouted a mouthful of blood. This was the so-called method of getting mutually wounded, where both of them were injured almost at the same time. But there appeared a look of terror in the eyes of the 8th prince when he saw Yi Zaiwen's injuries healing at an unimaginable speed. In a flash, Yi Zaiwen's body was restored to its original state, and there were no traces of wounds anywhere on his body. Not just the 8th prince, everyone present on the scene was dumbfounded. They saw that Yi Zaiwen's battle efficiency was also restored to its peak level. Only Gilded Tyrant Form was not enough to give him confidence that he could kill those two simultaneously. The main source of his confidence was the Phoenix regeneration technique. Yishiwen's combat effectiveness was not inferior to them, and so long as he continued to recover unceasingly, he would be able to kill both of them sooner or later. This was the only method capable of beheading both of them at the same time. If Yishiwen did not succeed this time, then it would be even more difficult the next time. Yishiwen did not want to fall short, and his present tactic was trading wound for wound. The fast regeneration ability of the Phoenix regeneration technique gave him such confidence. There was another way to exhaust them to death, although it would possibly hurt Yi Zaiwen's vitality and shorten his lifespan, but right now, he had no choice. He must get rid of the 8th prince, and Wan Qingyao, otherwise it would be disastrous if Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen fell into their hands. Earlier, he had heard false rumor of them falling into the hands of the enemy, but it might become a tragic reality. This needed to be done today. Yi Shiwen did not have the luxury of trying next time. Not to mention, he was aware of Wan Qingyao's mentality. He was even worse than the 8th prince, since no moral barriers could stop him from sinning if he felt offended. He would continue to wreak havoc throughout the island and must be exterminated today. Saving the world from these two psychos was worth losing some of his lifespan. If he was at Truth's 7th stage, then killing these tyrants would be a lot easier. Yi Shiwen showed no hesitation and rushed straight towards Wan Qingyao. Boom! Yi Ziwen's long blade went towards Wan Qingyao's body. The blade light released from the long blade invoked suppression law of the world and as if moved forward to crush the universe. Yi Shiwen had added divinity to the Bladiki, and that was the reason why the whole world shook in the presence of this divine attack. Shatter! Wan Qingyao's blade released a large stream of blade light towards the incoming attack. Shwa! The horrifying collision turned numerous trees into ashes, and Wan Qingyao's felt his hands go numb all of a sudden. He cursed in his heart, and did not know what kind of strange power was being used by Yi Shiwen, but his attacks contained extreme might, the force of hundreds of millions of jin, as if released to chop down the stars in the sky. Missing Moon Beheader. Yi Ziwen's first blade attack had not even stagnated when he made the second blade attack the very next moment. Boom! Another blade attack fiercely pounded on Wan Qingyao's blade, and the terrifying force contained in it shook him thoroughly. Boom! The third blade attack instantly changed its direction and sliced its way into Wan Qingyao's body. He suddenly spat a mouthful of blood and was extremely depressed in his heart. Yi Ziwen's blade skill was too weird because he caught the opportunity, and made 3 blade attacks one after another, and each attack was mightier than the previous one. This blade skill was called Missing Moon Beheader, and its key point was to find an opening in the opponent's defenses. As soon as there was an opening, the practitioner could use his strongest blade attack. And while waiting for an opening, the practitioner could continue to use blade attacks one after another to keep the opponent busy while constantly increasing the might of the attacks to confuse the opponent, going all the way up to the 9th blade attack. Of course, the 9th blade attack would contain an earth-shattering might, much more than the might of the previous blade attacks. However, Wan Qingyao was a skilled fighter, and he immediately dodged the next blade attack to get out the barrage of blade attacks coming one after another. He dodged the 4th blade attack and did not know that the 6th blade attack might have ended his life. Ordinary experts were unable to display the full might of Missing Moon Beheader, but in the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was a peerless blade master and had comprehended the ideal condition of this technique, it was truly frightening. Wan Qingyao quickly retreated far away from Yi Shiwen, but at this time, the 8th prince suddenly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The spectators were afraid to blink because they might miss something important. They were not just watching the battle but also observing the skills used by these 3 tyrannical experts and learning new things. Now, they knew that their assumptions were wrong. Instead of falling under the wind, Yi Shiwen actually had the upper hand, of course, only when he was fighting one opponent at a time. Not to mention, none of the 2 tyrants was a match of Yi Shiwen in Aoneon one fight. However, whenever the 8th prince and Wan Qingyao teamed up, Yi Shiwen was forced to switch to defense-styled combat. At this time, Wan Qingyao was feeling an uncontrollable rage surging in his heart. It was a shame for him that in spite of being at Truth 8th peak, he was pushed to such an extent by an expert that was 2 levels below him. If the 8th prince did not lend a hand then, Wan Qingyao's anger-filled roars resounded throughout the sky and the air began to boil like boiling water. Countless air explosions took place in the sky and it seemed as if the surrounding space would crack open any time. Wan Qingyao was releasing a terrifying imposing aura and some spectators felt as if their eardrums would shatter any moment now. Wan Qingyao went all out and his fearful imposing aura instantly locked on Yi Shiwen. He did not waste time and immediately shot a rippling blade light that rushed towards Yi Shiwen at a lightning-fast speed. Boom! Yishiwen tried to block this attack but was sent flying and his ribs were completely shattered. Yishiwen felt an intense pain raiding his brain. World domination! The eighth prince did not miss this chance and directly impaled Yishiwen with his spear. Boom! Yishiwen was directly nailed to the ground. Seeing Yishiwen in this state, the eighth prince laughed and a grim look appeared on his face. Last time, he was nailed to the ground and that brought a lifelong shame for him, but he took revenge today by doing the same to Yishiwen. However, his pleased mood did not last long because Yi Zaiwen suddenly shot his palm, releasing a mass of spiraling energy that pounded on his chest and sent him flying. He paid the price for being arrogant and underestimating Yishiwen and also letting his guard down. He spurted a mouthful of blood and fell heavily on the ground. Yishiwen pulled out the spear from his body and his wounds healed almost instantaneously. The experts who saw this scene held their breaths and simply did not believe their eyes. How was this possible? How could he have such an ability which simply defied the heavens' will? Most importantly, was it literally impossible to kill Yishiwen? No wonder he was so full of confidence, and challenged these two tyrannical experts. Yi Zaiwen's hands were instantly enveloped by a kind of seething golden energy. Whoosh! An awful piercing sound echoed throughout the sky when Yishiwen threw the spear towards the eighth prince, who was still lying on the ground. Boom! The spear descended upon the eighth prince and nailed him to the ground. Yishiwen was quite far away and did not know what kind of expression appeared on his face right now. Perhaps he was excited to be nailed to the ground by his own spear? In fact, the eighth prince's face was flush red with shame and embarrassment. After all, this was the second time he was nailed to the ground by Yishiwen. Not to mention, he did not have the phoenix regeneration technique to heal his wounds. However, at this time, Yishiwen did not get a chance to give the finishing blow to the eighth prince because Wan Qingyao immediately appeared in front of him. The atmosphere began to disintegrate when these two collided and several experts trembled with fear and excitement. If they had not seen this battle from the beginning, they would have continued to think that Yishiwen was just an expert of Truth's sixth peak and his battle efficiency was comparable to the experts of Truth's seventh peak. But now they knew that there was no one on this island that could be his rival. The long blade danced in Yi Zaiwen's hands. A huge dragon roared and flew into the sky and it seemed like its fierce claws would tear the sky to shreds. To be continued. Chapter 250. NT First Sponsored Chapter for the Week. Thanks to Cameron Sears, U.S., and Joshua, U.S., for sponsoring this chapter. Chapter 250 Frightened. The long blade danced in Yi Zaiwen's hands. A huge dragon roared and flew into the sky and it seemed like its fierce claws would tear the sky to shreds. Boom! A fearsome blast engulfed the sky and instantly formed a tornado so massive that the spectators felt as if they would be sucked into it, even though they were observing from afar. Wan Qingyao's blade light gave rise to chaos in the sky and arrived in front of Yishiwen. With a flick of his hand, Yishiwen diverted the trajectory of the blade light. The two tyrannical experts then engaged in a terrible battle and none of them seemed to hold back. They were no longer using complex martial techniques to show off their skills, rather they were now resorting to make use of brute force and inherent energy. Wan Qingyao was relying on his higher level while Yishiwen was relying on gilded tyrant form and phoenix regeneration technique to sustain such a world-shattering battle. The spectators felt as if the battle potential of these two experts was enough to cause the end of this world. They were nothing like the mediocre experts from their respective levels. One could see that whether it was Wan Qingyao, Yishiwen, the eighth prince, Warhawk, or the remaining two super experts, all of them were basically outstanding experts even among the group of peerless geniuses summoned to this island. In a few years, they would surely be sitting at the top of not just their own generation, but a generation above them. Moreover, a clash between them was bound to happen sooner or later. Initially, everyone thought that Yishiwen didn't belong among these tyrannical experts and would certainly die, but now they did not think so. Yishiwen had already shown enough strength to stand among them. Yishiwen did not fall under the wind even while facing those two tyrants at the same time. What else did they need as a proof of his tyrannical strength? Yi Zaiwen's performance was not just strong, he actually managed to injure both Wan Qingyao and the 8th prince. And judging from the battle, they could clearly see that in a one-on-one battle, Yi Shiwen was superior to both of them. In fact, even Warhawk would have been unable to perform this well if he was the one battling these two tyrants. Therefore, it was obvious that no one on this island could alone beat Yi Shiwen, not to mention it seemed literally impossible to kill him since he had some kind of mystical regeneration technique that defied the heavens. Yi Shiwen was confident that he could kill them both and also knew that even if the super experts teamed up to fight against these two tyrants, might not be able to defeat them. No wonder the super experts did not dare to participate in this battle even if they wanted to and were just watching from sidelines. He and only he could do this. And he must do this. Of course, if Yi Shiwen was at Truth 8th stage, then this battle would have ended in the very beginning. Then Yi Shiwen would be so powerful that if he desired, he could single-handedly wipe out each and every expert from the face of this island. What happened? Was it not you who wanted me to come out? Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. See, I came out to test your skill, but it seems like a waste of time. Yi Shiwen completely released his terrifying aura and appeared just like a god in the sky. The divinity was crawling all over his body, and the look in his eyes was extremely cold, as if a god of destruction was looking at his prey. In Yi Zaiwen's godlike presence, everyone looked no different than ant-like existences. Yi Shiwen decided not to wait any longer and took advantage of the 8th prince being presently nailed to the ground. He launched a full-scale attack to kill Wan Qingyao in one fell swoop. Otherwise, going on like this was not favorable for him. The Phoenix regeneration technique was not completely invincible and involved large energy consumption. He was still at the peak of Truth's 6th stage, and the ratio of consumption was certainly large in comparison to that of an expert of Truth 8th stage. Yi Shiwen looked just like a god to everyone present on the scene. His whole body was covered with endless divinity, and exuding fearful rays of golden light in all directions. At this time, he looked like a being who could subjugate anyone in the 10,000 worlds. Wan Qingyao looked at the godlike being standing in the sky and understood that he must immediately release all his power, otherwise he would not be able to survive the next attack. He was curious to know the secret of Yi Zaiwen's strange power but was scared of death. This was the first time he was scared of losing his life. However, Wan Qingyao was an arrogant guy. He was destined to become one of the leaders of the southeast region and rule above countless people. He also completely released his power and shot his mightiest blade light towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen used his long blade to first block this blade light, then instantly congealed the invincible might of gilded tyrant form in his palms and tore that blade light to shreds. The spectators felt as if they were transported to the prehistoric era and were watching a battle between two war gods. It was like a battle between a golden martial god and a devil. One of the two was instantly regenerating his severed body parts, while the other was totally ignoring his severe injuries. Not to mention, their prestige was on the line, so the rest of the world could just meet the doom. They couldn't care less and were fully indulged in this frenzy. On the one hand, Wan Qingyao looked crazier with a crazed look flashing in his bloodshot eyes and was putting everything on the line to get rid of Yi Zaiwen, while on the other hand, Yi Shiwen looked calm and composed and his golden eyes were focused on the prey. The golden divinity not only granted him a tyrannical body but also influenced his perception and charisma. Right now, anyone would say without hesitation that Yi Shiwen was much more powerful than Wan Qingyao. I can dominate people, I can manipulate anyone. I am a supreme being who was born to rule. You are nothing in front of me. Wan Qingyao roared with rage. The Wan True Union was just a way to prove his dominance to the younger generation of the 10 countries of the Southeast region. It was just the first step towards dominating the entire Southeast region by subjugating these peerless geniuses of the younger generation. Then, within few hundred years, he might become a huge presence, far above the reach of the 10 countries of Southeast region. It could be said that his ambition was far ahead of the ambition of the 8th prince. However, just when he was going to be successful in the most critical step, he had to face an obstacle like Yi Shiwen. And before his ambition could take a real form, it was basically crippled by Yi Shiwen. He was so angry right now that he not only wanted to chop down Yi Shiwen into pieces, but also wanted to annihilate his soul so that he would never be able to reincarnate. Wan Qingyao's imposing aura was increasing crazily, fueled by his rage, and it eventually became almost comparable to Yi Zaiwen's divine aura. "You actually think that someone like you can dominate people?" Yi Shiwen sneered. "How foolish can you be? You think strength is enough to dominate people? I don't even feel like educating you on the topic, anyway. It's going to be a waste of time to educate a dead man." Yi Shiwen finally understood why Wan Qingyao and that eighth prince had teamed up. There was a popular saying in his past life, "Birds of a feather flock together." These two were ambitious fools who wanted to dominate people with sheer power. Well, they were not completely mistaken about the basic concept of domination, since this world was governed by strength. But Yi Shiwen was not someone from this world. He was certainly not someone who would allow someone, certainly not such idiots, to dominate him. Boom! Yi Shiwen instantly rushed forward like a missile, and his terrifying speed caused sonic booms. Horrifying! The experts could not help but praise Yi Zaiwen's power. They had to move far back to stay away from the aftermath of the supersonic waves. Hey! Save us! Hey! The pitiful screams transmitting from within the Shuling array gradually disappeared. One by one, all of the trapped disciples had been nailed to the ground. Mu Yuran was standing on the side, and his face looked extremely pale and covered in sweat. One could imagine the consumption of Jinyuan for maintaining such a massive array. At this time, he was literally out of energy, but didn't seem worried because almost all of the enemy disciples were now dead. After hearing the last screams of a few surviving members of his alliance, Wan Qingyao got even angrier and attacked Yi Shiwen. Die! A war cry thundered in the sky, and Yi Shiwen dived towards Wan Qingyao like a god descending to the earth. His hands transformed into two coiling dragons and swept out to crush the world. The whole world rippled as if suppressed by the two mighty dragons. Yi Zaiwen's fearful imposing aura was suffocating Wan Qingyao, but his complexion appeared grimmer than that of the eighth prince. Both experts once again engaged in a superheated battle, almost disregarding their own safety by using most of their energy reserves in the attacks. Wan Qingyao waved his blade and released a fearful bladiki mixed with his imposing aura. Yi Shiwen again tore the mass of bladiki with his bare hands. He had already removed the limiter and fully unleashed Gilded Tyrant form at the cost of fast consumption of Jinyuan. He was all prepared to end this battle very soon. The spectators felt their hearts almost jumping out of their mouths. Perhaps this was the most tyrannical battle to take place on this island so far. Puchi! Wan Qingyao's blade suddenly opened a huge wound on Yi Zaiwen's golden body. However, at this moment, he was unable to dodge in time and suffered a punch on his chest that instantly made a dent on his solid chest. He spurted a mouthful of blood and was sent flying far away. Yi Zaiwen's wound healed instantly, and he rushed towards Wan Qingyao and once again thrust his palm. Yi Shiwen had abandoned complex moves and was focusing on most primitive moves. Each time Yi Shiwen was injured by Wan Qingyao, the counterattack would also cause him injuries. However, Yi Zaiwen's instant healing ability was constantly crushing the morale of Wan Qingyao. Wan Qingyao felt like vomiting blood when he saw that all his efforts were basically useless. Yi Zaiwen's golden body was spotless without a single scratch anywhere. Wan Qingyao was not a fool, and even he could see that his own attacks, if not powerful enough, were not able to injure Yi Zaiwen's golden body. And whenever he put extra energy and effort to strengthen his attack to injure Yi Shiwen, he would face a counterattack from Yi Shiwen at the same time, making the whole thing counterproductive since Yi Shiwen was somehow able to heal his own wounds instantly. Yi Shiwen was defying common sense, and his battle strategy was flawless. Wan Qingyao's rage was nowhere to be seen. In fact, it was now replaced by fear and frustration. Perhaps, no one in the crowd of spectators was capable enough to block Wan Qingyao's attacks, but even such attacks were useless in front of Yi Zaiwen's flawless battle strategy. Wan Qingyao had already lost the confidence of winning. He was scared to attack Yishiwen, thinking that the next counterattack might end his own life. He could neither run away nor attack. Of course, he certainly could not stand idly and think. Your tyranny ends here and now! Yishiwen sneered and rushed forward. Ah! From a distant place, the eighth prince suddenly began to shout, and his spear also began to emit rays of horrifying light. He was holding his spear and trying to pull it out of his body to break free, and immediately rushed to rescue Wan Qingyao. Wan Qingyao's face revealed a look of pleasant surprise. He thought that he must survive until the eighth prince would break free, then both of them would team up to kill Yishiwen. Perhaps he still had not noticed that he was thinking like a coward and had already lost the battle of wits. He had fallen into the well-planned trap of Yishiwen. Right now, he was scared and had also lost confidence. He could not even contemplate a scenario for alone defeating Yishiwen. He was subconsciously depending on the eighth prince's help, and this thought process was surely going to bring his doom. His invincible courage and confidence had been thoroughly crushed by Yishiwen. He was no longer a tyrant whose ambition was to dominate the world. Now, he was just a pathetic warrior who had lost faith in his own strength and was relying on someone else to save his life. To be continued. NT milestone achieved. Next target 300. Chapter 251. NT, this is the week's first regular chapter. There will be 3 more regular releases this week. Chapter 251. Execution of a tyrant. He no longer had that previous courage and invincible aura. His frame of mind had changed from tyranny to cowardice. Wan Qingyao was roaring out of desperation. He felt empty inside. The dominating heart of a tyrant had already been crushed by Yishiwen in front of everyone. Now, he was just an empty shell of his previous self. Unfortunately, this battle is over. We are witnessing the fall of a tyrant. Warhawk shook his head and said, Indeed. Ji Moon and Wang Purple also nodded. The 3 super experts were standing on the front line with hands crossed behind their backs. A tyrant like Wan Qingyao is truly a terrifying existence. He is at the peak of truth 8th stage and is certainly at the pinnacle of the younger generation in the entire southeast region. Even I cannot dare to say that I can beat him, and note my point, he is stronger than Yishiwen. Yes, Yishiwen is merely at the peak of truth 6th stage, but his body is extremely tough and intrepid. This is the main reason why he is able to fight with 2 experts of truth 8th stage. Warhawk's vision could be called sharp and sinister. He had seen through Yi Zaiwen's secret. But the point was that he and the other spectators were able to understand this fact only after actually seeing Yishiwen in battle. And the 8th prince and Wan Qingyao did not have such luxury since they had already blundered by challenging Yishiwen. Warhawk was confident that if he was at the peak of truth 8th stage, then he might be able to fight with 1 expert of truth 8th peak, but certainly not 2. But who was Wan Qingyao? Yes, an expert at the pinnacle of truth 8th stage, a super genius and a tyrannical existence who did not think twice before killing people. One could see that fighting such a ruthless expert was not an easy task, not to mention Yishiwen dealt with actually 2 such tyrants. In simple words, Yishiwen went against the heaven's will in front of so many people. Wan Qingyao's real strength is actually slightly more than the strength of Yishiwen, but unfortunately, he seems to have lost his courage and ambition. He succumbed to fear, and even if he survives this battle, perhaps he will never be able to regain his confidence and glory. Those who heard Warhawk's commentary nodded and continued to look at the scene in which Wan Qingyao had completely fallen under the wind. Yishiwen was constantly using Phoenix regeneration and was not afraid of anything. He went ahead bravely and unscrupulously shot. Wan Qingyao's attacks were still tyrannical, but even if Yishiwen was defeated 10 times, he would stand up 10 times in a completely healed state, whereas if Wan Qingyao was defeated even once, he would start to act all timid and scared. He had completely lost his motivation to beat Yishiwen and was simply biding time for the 8th prince to come to his rescue. The screams had fully disappeared within Shuling Array because all of the besieged disciples of the Imperial Union and the One True Union had been crucified to death by the evil blood god. Wish! The entire array suddenly collapsed and vanished into thin air. Mu Yuren's complexion was extremely pale, as if there wasn't a trace of blood left in his body. His energy had been completely drained by Shuling Array, and not just him, even his fellow disciples of Shuling Union were also in a similar state. Some were in more serious state, and immediately fainted. Shuling Union can also be called Blood Spirit Union. So they must have used their blood and energy to build that array. Shuling Array's might was outstanding, so the energy requirement was certainly going to be big. In fact, the energy consumption was so huge that even a high-level expert like Mu Yuran came close to draining his entire Jinyuan and blood. However, at this time, no one dared to take advantage of Shuling Union's weakened state. Even those who normally hated the Shuling Union and were silently in favor of the Imperial Union and the One True Union did not dare to act because the battle was not yet over. They were waiting to see the final outcome. Not to forget, there was a possibility that Yi Shiwen appeared for the sake of Shuling Union, so they were being cautious. Also on another battlefield, Mu Ling and Jane Wuchen were engaged in a superheated battle, though not as destructive as the other one, but there was no less brutality involved in this one as well. At this time, Jian Wuchen growled. His whole body was covered with blood and his bones were truncated at some places. Mu Ling's body was also covered in wounds. There was an exceptionally terrible wound on his chest. This was really a battle between two evenly matched opponents, two veteran sword masters. Mu Ling raised his sword and summoned a yellow river that appeared behind him and instantly flowed towards Jian Wuchen. Mu Ling's battle efficiency was increasing continuously, and yet there were no signs of a breakthrough, but his attacks were getting fiercer. Jian Wuchen wasn't deterred by this, and he immediately waved his sword to congeal clouds of sword ki around him to protect himself from the onslaught of the Yellow River. Boom! Even the terrible collision like this could not compel these two men to retreat. A bit more. Mu Ling's battle efficiency finally broke through the boundary of Truth's 7th stage under the heavy pressure of this insane battle. His imposing aura suddenly stepped into the Truth 8th stage. The spectators who were paying attention to this battle were suddenly stunned. This decisive battle of life and death was between two equally matched opponents, but Mu Ling actually benefited from it. Shwa! Mu Ling's sword came very close to Jian Wuchen's neck and stopped right before it was about to behead him. I do not want to kill you, Mu Ling said. He had defeated Jian Wuchen, but he also admired this man's talent and fighting spirit. Mu Ling admired him as a fellow swordsman and had also heard from Yi Shiwen that Jian Wuchen was actually an honest man with a very clean and pure soul. Indeed, he was nothing more than a sword slave of the 8th prince, but today, this would change. And someday, he would become a truly outstanding hero. Someday, I will find you and we will finish our unfinished business, Jian Wuchen said and turned around to leave. Everyone watched his back profile as he slowly disappeared into the horizon. His fellow disciples were already dead, so there was no point in staying here. Yi Shiwen smiled when he noticed that Mu Ling stepped into the Truth 8th stage. Having a strong reinforcement surely strengthened his confidence. Wan Qingyao was startled by this, but it made him even more desperate. He shouted like a crazy guy and shot a rippling blade light at Yi Shiwen. Yi Zaiwen's golden hands caught that rippling blade light and tore it apart. Then he immediately flew towards Wan Qingyao like a bullet fired from a gun. Yi Zaiwen's palms struck out horizontally and simultaneously pounded on Wan Qingyao's chest. Bang! Wan Qingyao was sent flying, and the tremendous force contained in his attack broke many of his ribs. Wan Qingyao seemed to have been cornered by Yi Shiwen and appeared like a madman who was desperately fighting a battle for his own survival. He rushed forward like a lunatic to maliciously attack Yi Shiwen. Moreover, the 8th prince was almost done removing the seal from his spear. He did not take too long to do this, which indicated the extent of his skill and terrifying might. Wan Qingyao was like a ferocious beast in general. He disregarded the consumption of energy, and released a black-colored blade light that looked like a lightning from hell as it went straight towards Yishiwen. "Now you die!" Wan Qingyao roared while stubbornly staring at Yishiwen. He seemed quite confident in this attack. Yishiwen smirked and stuck out his hands as if to tear the space itself. The golden divinities poured out of his hands and crawled towards the black lightning. Boom! The two attacks collided and began to devour each other, setting off layer upon layer of air storms in all directions. When his best attack failed as well, Wan Qingyao's complexion paled. Yishiwen sneered but noticed that the eighth prince was about to break free, so he must kill Wan Qingyao as soon as possible. Yishiwen rushed forward and seemed in a hurry, but his mind was unusually calm. Bang! Yizaiwen's palm pounded on the back of Wan Qingyao. Wan Qingyao was directly sent flying. His grandiose stature flew upside down, and right at this moment, Yishiwen suddenly jumped in the air, twisted his waist, and launched a kick at Wan Qingyao from above almost instantly. "Ah!" The eighth prince shouted and finally managed to pull out the spear from his own body. He stood up and looked around to find Yishiwen, but at this time, a shocking scene greeted his eyes. Yishiwen raised his foot up in the air as if to split Wan Qingyao's body into two halves with a kick. But Wan Qingyao obviously wouldn't allow him to achieve his wish. He immediately released a blade light, but even that could not stop Yizaiwen's kick. The divinities concentrated on his foot instantly dispersed the blade light, and his kick directly landed on Wan Qingyao's body. Bang! A horrible sound of breaking bones resounded everywhere. Wan Qingyao screamed pitifully as his chest was completely crushed by Yishiwen. The divinities instantly entered his body and churned his internal organs. Wan Qingyao struggled a bit but ultimately could not withstand the loss of vitality and died on the spot. What? The eighth prince's eyes opened wide in disbelief when he saw how Wan Qingyao was trampled to death by Yishiwen. It didn't take him too long to set himself free, but he never expected to see such an unbelievable turn of events. Now there's no one left to interfere. Prepare yourself for the inevitable death, because today, I will make sure that no one comes to save you. Yishiwen looked coldly at the eighth prince and said. It was obvious that he would not allow the eighth prince to escape this time. To be continued. Chapter 252. NT. Regular Chapter. Chapter 252. You were unqualified. The eighth prince was startled and angry at the same time. He never thought that an expert like Wan Qingyao would meet such a horrifying death by getting trampled to death. Setting sun. Oblique wind. Blood. Broken bones. Everything was outlining a desolate scene in the battlefield. Yishiwen was not in a hurry to kill the eighth prince. He was taking advantage of this time to restore his power by constantly mobilizing Phoenix regeneration technique. The experts who were observing from the sidelines only saw Yishiwen going forward bravely, but they never noticed that he was also actually injured. The strength of these two tyrants was far above his own, so sustaining some injuries during the clashes was obvious because gilded tyrant form could only give a certain amount of protection to him at a time, then he again had to rely on Phoenix regeneration to heal. However, these two techniques were not invincible or infinite. A moment ago, when he was giving the finishing blow to Wan Qingyao, Yishiwen accumulated a lot of bruises on his body and had no choice but to heal up using Phoenix regeneration. In addition, it was an undeniable fact that he was unable to kill these two tyrants simultaneously. The eighth prince was stuck in a stunned pose for a while, and this allowed Yishiwen to rest for some time. When Yizaiwen's breathing calmed down, he looked coldly at the eighth prince and said, By now, you certainly wouldn't have imagined that today I will send you to hell. Ha 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 ha! The eighth prince laughed loudly and wasn't intimidated by this. Today, I will offer you and your people as sacrifices to my cause. The eighth prince's voice thundered as his spear transformed into a dragon and crawled forward as if to pierce the sky. Radiant stars dazzling at the tip of his spear as if buzzed and advanced towards Yishiwen. The eighth prince was not discouraged and seemed more tenacious and sinister than Wan Qingyao. He needed to get rid of Yishiwen as soon as possible because Mu Ling had unexpectedly become a possible threat to his life, and if Yi Shiwen teamed up with Mu Ling, then that would certainly bring his doom. He had no other way out. Yi Ziwen's golden hands effortlessly tore off the dazzling spear attack, and the very next moment, his golden palms shot forward and swept out a vast golden light which crawled towards the eighth prince. Poof! This golden light was so fast that it instantly approached the eighth prince and pounded on his chest. He spat a mouthful of blood and quickly retreated several steps to neutralize the enormous force contained in Yi Ziwen's attack. Phoenix regeneration granted an astonishing recovery speed, though at the cost of Jin Yuan or vitality in extreme situations. But in a matter of few breaths, Yi Shiwen had already reached his peak condition, whereas the eighth prince had been injured twice by Yi Shiwen, not to mention he had been wounded by his own spear, and he had already spent a considerable amount of energy to set himself free. In other words, the eighth prince was certainly not at his peak condition right now and was actually at a disadvantage. However, Yi Shiwen was in peak condition, though at the cost of his vitality. Phoenix regeneration had already been displayed to the acme level by Yi Shiwen, granting him unimaginable strength and battle efficiency. Yi Ziwen's imposing aura climb to the peak, and golden divinity was surging in his boiling blood. Although the eighth prince was roaring again and deploying various secret technique one after another, but was still being defeated again and again by Yi Ziwen's golden palm attacks. In the face of absolute strength, all secret techniques were like floating clouds. It was simply impossible for the eighth prince to be an opponent of Yi Shiwen in such an injured state. Yi Ziwen's attacks were getting faster and faster, and at the same time, he had been constantly using Phoenix regeneration to stay at his peak condition at all times while launching attacks non-stop. Bang! The eighth prince's blood-bathed body was again sent flying. To spectators, Yi Shiwen radically looked like a fearless warrior, who was not only brave but unscrupulous. This observation was because of a simple fact that the rate of recovery was far beyond their imagination. But the same was not true for the eighth prince, and his pitiful appearance was visible to all. The eighth prince's battle efficiency slowly began to reduce. And finally, he was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Everyone saw the angry expression on the eighth prince's face changing to a shocked one when he was suddenly trampled by Yi Shiwen. He absolutely did not have any strength to fight back. Kaka! 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 The eighth prince's bones gradually cracked one by one, and some bones protruded out of his torn-off skin. Now, his body looked like a tattered bag of blood and cracked bones. Everyone looked at each other and was speechless. Was this time for the curtain to drop? Bang! The eighth prince had been brutally trampled by Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen did not stop there and kicked him so fiercely that he was sent flying miles away and crashed into a mountain. Yi Shiwen immediately approached the eighth prince, lifted his hand and landed a malicious slap on his face while holding his neck with the other hand. Wake up, open your eyes and properly witness the final moments of your pathetic life. Today, no one is here to save your ass. You are doomed, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Wait. A loud shout resounded throughout the sky. A youth, who appeared to be 20 years old and clad in ordinary clothes, suddenly descended from the sky. Yi Shiwen suddenly raised his eyebrows and asked, Again? Who are you? Emperor Chen. The man said proudly. What do you want? Do you also want to fight with me? Yi Shiwen pointed a finger at him and coldly asked. Yi Shiwen was vigilant and activated a sealing-type Shin method to seal the energy within the eighth prince's body. He was also mobilizing Phoenix regeneration technique to maintain a continuous restoration of his injuries and battle efficiency. Let him go. That's all I want. Emperor Chen said openly without hiding his intention. That's impossible. Yi Shiwen almost instantly said, leaving no scope for negotiation. How dare you go against my words? Emperor Chen said coldly. Humph. Am I supposed to care? Yi Shiwen tightened the grip on the eighth prince's neck. Yi Ziwen's iron-like claw was almost on the verge of crushing his neck. Yi Shiwen. A gentle voice sounded from afar. Yi Shiwen turned his head and saw the same Taoist priest he had met earlier. Qing Su descended from the sky like a celestial immortal. Qing Su, you are also with him? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said. He said this in a cold and rough tone and no longer felt like considering Qing Su as his friend. If possible, I would like you to spare the 8th prince's life. Qing Su sighed and said in a somewhat embarrassed tone. You have already killed one rare genius of the southeast region. At least spare the 8th prince. Ha ha! Yi Shiwen laughed loudly, then said, You have chosen such a nice time to come out as a peacemaker. I wonder why not you appeared back when these two so-called rare geniuses had teamed up to kill me. Where were you then? I expect you to give some proper reason. Because you were unqualified at that time, Emperor Chen said in a cold voice. And what he said was a fact. After all, who would have thought that Yi Shiwen would display such terrifying battle efficiency? Indeed, he was counted among well-known figures, but he was still not considered on the level of super experts. Yi Shiwen smirked. He once again witnessed the law of the strong and how obvious it was in this world. His own life was not worth saving before this battle, but now that he defeated these two tyrants, he suddenly started to get special attention from others. So these two did not feel like interfering earlier because the 8th prince and Wan Qingyao were great powerhouses and rare geniuses. Listen, Yi Shiwen, these things are very complex and includes the battle involving our southeast region with foreign powers. I hope you can show mercy and spare his life. Qing Su said with a sigh. Don't make me repeat myself. You are asking for impossible. Yi Shiwen shook his head. I certainly do not know much about this battle you talk about, but I know that he is a poisonous snake. I don't want any future trouble, so sparing his life is out of the question. And listen to this and deeply engrave it in your heart. You are unqualified to tell me what to do. Yi Shiwen turned towards Emperor Chen and said in a grim voice. And as he said these words, he used his other hand to grasp the 8th prince's head. The next instant, the 8th prince's head was crushed and dropped as a pile of brain paste and blood on the ground. You are courting death. Do you think that I will not kill you? Emperor Chen's imposing aura instantly enveloped Yi Zaiwen's body. He was angry because no one had ever dared to not give him face, but Yi Shiwen dared to kill the 8th prince right in front of his eyes. Emperor Chen's breath was extremely formidable. Perhaps he was on Truth 9th stage, though his inner state showed signs of instability, but he should be more powerful than the 8th prince. Then you are free to try. Yi Shiwen followed the rule of tit for tat and instantly summoned a layer of golden divinity over his body. His imposing aura also erupted out of his body at the same time. Well, since it has come to this, we will say nothing else. Qing Su could feel Yi Zaiwen's anger. He was finding it difficult to stand on the opposite of Yi Shiwen. If before, he had stood in support of Yi Shiwen, then it was perhaps okay to interfere now, but his current interference was no different from taking advantage of his friendship with Yi Shiwen. Emperor Chen's fiery eyes were staring at Yi Shiwen, and it seemed like he would launch an attack at any time. Yi Shiwen did not dare to relax even for a moment because Emperor Chen was extremely strong. However, it was true that the opposite party did not have grounds to blame Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen had not killed the 8th prince, then he would certainly have become a major threat to him or his family in the future. Yi Shiwen would obviously first ensure his own safety, otherwise, why would he care about the well-being of the southeast region? Everyone was stunned while witnessing this scene. Who was this Emperor Chen? Almost nobody knew him and had never heard of him since coming to this island. On the contrary, Warhawk was a bit surprised when he saw Emperor Chen and seemed to know his identity. To be continued. Chapter 253. NT, regular chapter, Chapter 253. Constant changes. The scene fell into a strange calm atmosphere. It seemed like Yi Shiwen and Emperor Chen would soon engage in battle, but this time, no one was daring to underestimate Yi Shiwen even though his opponent was at a much higher level. Who was this Emperor Chen? His strength was apparent to all, but what was he planning to do? Yi Zaiwen's whole body was covered with jinyuan, and while at the same time, golden divinities were crawling all over his body. He seemed all prepared for battle. The enemy was very strong, so Yishuan was not in a mood to make concessions. Instead, he intended to go all out from the get-go. "You'll be sorry." Emperor Chen looked at Qing Su and seemed a bit afraid of him. Then, he turned his face and looked coldly at Yishuan and said. Afterward, he immediately turned around to leave. When Emperor Chen left, Qing Su did not stop either. He looked at Yishuan and smiled with an apologetic expression on his face, then quickly vanished from there in front of everyone. Soon after these two left, Yishuan and Mu Ling also left, and went straight towards a secret mountain valley. In that secret valley, Wu Shaochuan was sitting cross-legged on the ground and meditating to recover. At this time, his whole body was stained with blood. "How did this happen? Why are you injured?" Yishuan asked. "Those bastards, though their main force was stationed to ambush you, they still left behind a lot of experts," Wu Shaochuan said. Since Yishuan knew himself being the main target of the 8th Prince and Wan Qingyao, so he naturally could not be careless. He certainly rushed into their ambush, but it was all part of a plan. Yishuan collaborated with the Shuling Union and helped them in planting a large Shuling array. The Shuling Union was naturally not going to stand still and patiently wait to get slaughtered. They also did not want to escape because it could later put a major stain on their reputation. Yishuan also asked Wu Shaochuan to go to Imperial Union's encampment to help him in rescuing Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen, who were rumored to have been captured by the 8th Prince, though these rumors might be a hoax to trap Yishuan. However, Yishuan knew that Wu Shaochuan's strength was enough for the job. After all, the main forces were going to be handled by him and the Shuling Union. Hence, Wu Shaochuan would only need to deal with residual forces in the enemy encampment. However, it seemed like Wu Shaochuan was injured while performing the task. "Are you okay?" Yishuan quickly asked. "Relax, I am fine. Their residual force was not a big deal, and these are minor injuries." Wu Shaochuan waved his hand and said. His injuries were a result of his own fault of underestimating the enemy. "But I am really glad that you came back, Yishuan. So that means those two bastards are really dead." Wu Shaochuan was astonished to see that there wasn't a single scratch on Yi Zaiwen's body. This was simply hard to imagine that he actually killed those two tyrants. "Yes." Yishuan nodded. "You're so fierce." Wu Shaochuan gave the thumbs up and smiled. But this stirred his wound and his face immediately contorted in pain. "But Yishuan, I did not see your sister apprentice and brother apprentice in the enemy encampment," Wu Shaochuan said. "Damn it, that bastard actually tricked us. I interrogated some people I caught in the encampment, and found out that they never caught your fellow disciples. It was a trap to force you out. I knew it. So it was really a trap." Yishuan trusted Wu Shaochuan, and only he knew that Yishuan had been looking for Hua Menghan and Chen Ruochen. Then how did the 8th Prince find out about it? Yishuan had asked Wu Shaochuan to find them, but outsiders did not know about it. Although Qing Su was related to Wu Shaochuan and knew about it, and Yishuan was not at all happy with him, but had a feeling that he would not do such a thing. So in the end, who leaked this information to the 8th Prince? Yishuan felt strange while thinking more and more about it, but now those two tyrants were dead, making this thing a permanent mystery for him. "Well, I asked a lot of formidable people for help," Wu Shaochuan said. "Perhaps one of them betrayed me, but fortunately it doesn't matter anymore because those two are already dead. Otherwise, this could have led to disastrous consequences. No matter what, I thank you for helping me today," Yishuan said with a smile, but his mind was still busy thinking about this matter. The news about how Yishuan fought with the 8th Prince and Wan Qingyao and killed them both shook the entire Demon Island. Yishuan became a well-known figure, much more famous than he used to be. If Emperor Qin had not appeared at the end of the battle and threatened Yishuan, then all of the experts would have come forward to put a crown on Yi Zaiwen's head. Besides Yishuan, no one else would have dared to pull off such a stunt. What, that Yishuan actually killed two experts of Truth 8th stage? Yes, two experts of Truth 8th stage were not his match. Wan True Union really had it coming. Wan Qingyao and the 8th Prince's death shocked the entire Demon Island, but nothing could become an eternal topic of discussion on this island. The topic slowly submerged under several other topics which popped up one after another. 3 months passed quickly. On the Demon Island, several young geniuses lost their lives while several others obtained a lot of benefits. Their cultivation increased by leaps and bounds, and they suddenly became the new champions on this island. For example, shortly after the death of the two tyrants, both Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan became famous throughout the Demon Island. In a competition for relics and vestiges, Mu Ling defeated Wang Purple and his alliance, and this put him in the list of top players on the Demon Island. And in a month's time, Wu Shaochuan officially stepped into Truth 8th stage and thereby also landed on the list of top players. These changes continued to take place for 3 months. During this period, several heroes lost their glory while several others made brave appearances. In a flash, almost 6 months had already passed on the Demon Island since the island first closed down. In a period of only 6 months, many experts had multiple breakthroughs, and there were some who actually leaped from Truth's 2nd stage to Truth's 6th stage. Although this island was not as big as Jinwuji yet, but it held more resources in comparison, enough for these young geniuses. At least, they did not have worry about practicing resources. 1 year's worth of cultivation on this island was equivalent to 10 years' worth of cultivation in the outside world, or even more, to be honest. Of course, the risk was also high because only a few hundred experts were still alive out of more than 1,000 summoned experts. In fact, almost half of the summoned experts had already died. Although the cultivation was very efficient here, the mortality rate was also quite high. In addition to the deadly fights between human experts, the biggest problem was battles between humans and demon beasts. The young geniuses who were summoned to this island were under 50 years of age, and even the strongest human expert was still in Truth Realm, but the same was not true for demon beasts. Indeed, most of the times the demon beasts were in Truth Realm, but there were many half-step legendary level demon beasts as well. Not to mention, there were ethnic groups with legendary realm demon beasts, and some were even beyond legendary realm, i.e. those old monsters that wandered the depths of this island and were presumably in the Saint Realm. Therefore, even if the experts were slowly exploring the depths of the Demon Island, they hadn't ventured into the true depths of the island and were only exploring the peripheral zone. Those who dared to go to the real depths never came back. But even so, there were many who still benefited a lot from their explorations, and this was the reason why their cultivations progressed by leaps and bounds, placing them among top players. The latest rumor shocked the entire Demon Island when experts got to know that Warhawk found an ancient egg which was actually a relic of ancient times. It was an egg of a golden eagle, and they found it floating in the air. The chick was actually at Small Truth Realm, and some experienced experts said that if this egg had hatched long time ago, when it was supposed to hatch, then this chick would have been born directly into the legendary realm. NT, Truth 5th Peak Small Truth Truth 6th Stage. This discovery immediately sent a wave of excitement among human experts. It was said that only dragons gave birth to legendary level baby dragons. So the mother of this egg was actually a demon beast that was on the level of dragons. This news could stir the entire southeast region. To be continued. Chapter 254. Chapter 254. Demon Beast Egg. It was a well-known fact that all Demon Beast eggs came with expiry dates and must hatch within a certain period of time. Otherwise, these eggs wouldn't be able to hatch and stay buried under the ground for a long time, ending up becoming a fossil. Some would rot, whereas some would miraculously survive the lapse of so many years, however, at the cost of consumption of vitality. If these eggs had hatched countless years ago, when they were supposed to hatch naturally, then the newly born demon beasts would probably take birth directly in legendary realm, or in a realm even above that. Moreover, it was said that there should be more than one egg buried under the ground. This spread a wave of joy and excitement among the human experts, and they rushed to capture the remaining eggs. Even one such egg would be a very big harvest. Soon, the second golden egg was discovered by human experts. It belonged to a pterosaur, and the expert who found it was only at Truth 4th stage. As soon as he unearthed the egg, it hatched, but things didn't go well for that expert. On the contrary, the baby pterosaur gave him a fatal blow and killed him almost instantly, before flying away from there. However, this was not enough to deter the crazy experts from looking for the buried eggs, because they believed that the killed expert was careless and incompetent for the job. They were overconfident that a newly born demon beast should not be that big of a threat to their lives. So, experts from all over the island flocked towards that area where the buried egg had been discovered. The demon beasts that hatched out from these eggs were certainly not like the common demon beasts that were prevalent on this island. They were far stronger than rest of the demon beasts of the demon island. One must know that common species of demon beasts found on this island were far stronger than the species found in outside world. So, it was easy to guess that these eggs belonged to tyrannical demon beasts of ancient era. However, survival through the passage of numerous years caused consumption of a major part of eggs' vitality and essence. No wonder demon beasts that were supposed to be taking birth in legendary realm were now taking birth in truth realm. Not all knew about this fact. Later, another matter shocked everyone. This was also related to demon beasts, because on the demon island, even if there were many demon beasts, but there still remained a division of territory among them. They rarely crossed into each other's territories, and since human experts preferred to not barge into the territories of demon beasts, there was rarely a clash between the two races. However, after the hunt for eggs became popular, the human experts couldn't restrain themselves and started intruding into the territory of demon beasts. Originally, there was a presence of formidable demon beasts in depths of the demon island, and one such tyrannical demon beast visited Eagle Union encampment. It was a bird-type demon beast of legendary realm, a senior beast who personally visited Warhawk and his men to take back the golden-winged eagle's chick that was subdued by Warhawk. Reportedly, the chick belonged to an ancient mighty demon god, and demon beasts did not want it to fall into the hands of human beings. The two sides came very close to war, and Warhawk wasn't scared at all, even while facing a legendary level demon beast. But the fight did not happen because the golden-winged eagle's chick was reluctant to leave Warhawk and actually wanted to become his partner. So, the senior demon beast had to bitterly leave. Before leaving, it bowed submissively, not to show respect to the human experts, but to the small chick who was still in truth realm. This incident was a solid proof that demon beasts weren't dumb creatures without wisdom. It was just an ignorant perception that must be changed, especially because now these human experts were on an island which was home to tyrannical demon beasts. Human experts always underestimated demon beasts and didn't think twice before massacring them for their own benefits. But the wise demon beasts of this island were a different story altogether, pertaining to their high wisdom and tyrannical strength. However, this again made more and more people crazy to find the eggs. After all, who wouldn't want to have an ancient beast as pet? When a newborn beast was already born in the higher stages of truth realm, one could imagine how powerful it would become after reaching adulthood. Some experts were planning to capture one and sell it in the future for huge benefits. Human experts were no fool and reacted quickly. Now they knew from Warhawk's example that newborn beasts could be subdued and thereby turned into loyal pets. Although they could not fight with the demon beasts lurking in the depths of the island, but they could at least capture the eggs. Suddenly, several experts rushed towards the area that was rumored to be hiding eggs. In a cave, a bundle of black light was blooming, and a strange dragon howl burst out in the form of shock waves, but was soon prevented from going outside by a circular membrane made up of energy. What kind of mysterious technique is Yishuan practicing in there? He is creating so much turbulence. From a distant place, Wu Shaochuan said while looking at the cave's entrance. There was an incredible look in his eyes. I do not know, Mu Ling replied and waved his sword, releasing an endless stream of light into the sky. Since that battle, Wu Shaochuan was disinclined to return to the small faction of Qing Su and few other rogue experts. He preferred staying with Yishuan and Mu Ling and formed a small group of 3 people. Not to mention, this trio was strong enough to deal with any possible threat on this island. Now on the entire demon island, situation was getting increasingly bizarre. more and more dangerous, so no one dared to stay alone. After practicing for 3 months, 2 days ago, Mu Ling finally stepped into the Truth Ninth Stage. Although his inner state was not yet stable, but this was enough to put him among the most outstanding human elites on this island. Wu Shaochuan was also not much behind and reached the peak of Truth 8th Stage. He was almost on the verge of stepping into Truth 9th Stage. Among all of the summoned geniuses, Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan were clearly the super elites among elites, undoubtedly among the top. Despite being so young, they managed to reach such higher levels. Of course, there were few other experts that were at higher levels than these two when they came to this island, but all those experts were older. Basically, it could be said that these two were bound to become dominating figures in the southeast region sooner or later. In fact, not just Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan, all other experts were going to become tyrannical figures in the future. When considering Yishuan, 3 months ago, he was able to defeat 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak. When these 3 were together in one group, who would dare to provoke them? Yishuan was concentrating on training and cultivating, while the other 2 members of group were keeping watch, even though they knew that no one would dare to provoke them. Wu Shaochuan was very satisfied because while staying with 2 cultivation freaks like Mu Ling and Yishuan, he could also concentrate more on cultivating. Not to mention, he felt safe with these 2 trustworthy friends. Mu Ling also did not mind being with Yishuan and Wu Shaochuan, as long as it didn't hinder his practice. His cultivation relied on Dead Qi and Yellow River, and he had limited time on this island, so he could not afford to waste time. One must know that his progress speed was almost equivalent to that of Yishuan. The 3 experts usually shared their respective experiences with each other, and were benefiting greatly. It seems like he will soon have a breakthrough, then his power will shatter the flag array, Mu Ling said. Yishuan always found it very difficult to break through since his foundation was strong and each breakthrough required huge accumulation of energy. The difficulty level of his breakthrough was much above that of ordinary experts, but once the breakthrough occurred, then his strength would increase dramatically and directly surpass the strength of the experts at much higher level. How is he able to do it? I am quite interested. Let's go and check. Wu Shaochuan smiled and said. Not interested, Mu Ling answered. Many people want to obtain it, still cannot obtain, you know. Wu Shaochuan curled up his lips and said. My way is the way of the sword. Everything else is like a distraction for me, Mu Ling indifferently said. Man, you are really a cultivation man. Wu Shaochuan said and realized that this was precisely the reason why he was one step behind Mu Ling. He lacked the craziness that Yishuan and Mu Ling displayed when it came to cultivation. But he was not planning to change because his natural disposition included his free, easygoing and straightforward nature. One of the prohibited taboos in the world of martial arts included abstaining from concealing one's own natural disposition. Cultivation not only targeted at the improvement of body but also mind and soul. So a cultivator must never try to conceal his true disposition while cultivating. The disposition of the 8th prince was also a kind of nature that helped him a lot in getting stronger. Boom! A loud explosive sound echoed throughout the cave. To be continued. Chapter 255. Chapter 255 Foul-Mouthed Cub. Boom! A loud explosive sound echoed throughout the cave. A blue figure strode out from the cave with a sort of smile on his face. Several deep-water black snakes were flying around him and growling. Although his stature looked exquisite and fairly small in comparison to the monstrous beasts floating around him, but his terrifying, imposing aura was enough to show who was the boss here. Yishuan was holding poisonous dragon water control flag array in his hand. After several months of training day and night, Yi Zaiwen was planning to reach Truth 9th Stage, and in order to reach this stage, he had collected the corpses and souls of deep-water black snakes for later consumption. Since, at the time of breaking to the half-step legendary realm, he would need to have a proper amount of accumulation as well as a difference in the quality of energy. Also because of this, so far, he was only able to reach Truth's 7th stage since he was focusing more on the accumulation of heavy amounts of energy. However, now that he had completely entered Truth's 7th stage, one could see that his strength was not at all inferior to any of the experts of Truth's 9th stage. This really pumped an invincible confidence inside him. "You had a breakthrough?" Wu Xiaochuan asked. "Yes," Yishiwen said with a smile. He had successfully stepped into Truth's 7th stage, and for him, its significance was hard to put in words. In short, now he was no longer afraid of anyone from Truth Realm. Unless his opponent was an expert of half-step legendary realm or above, he could easily deal with rest of the experts on this island. Now, he could also be regarded as strongest in the younger generation of experts. Yi Zaiwen's practice time was much shorter when compared with other young geniuses, so this was a huge achievement for him. "Come on, let's go," Yishiwen said and grinned at the same time. "Where are we going?" Wu Xiaochuan asked. "We are going to check out that place where demon beast eggs are buried," Yishiwen said. "It has been so noisy lately. Let's go and see what's with all this commotion." According to the rumors, these so-called ancient eggs were buried in a stretch of river basin, more like a very spacious plain, surrounded by cliffs from all sides. At this time, the entire area was overrun by experts, and all of them were trying to find eggs. Yi Shiwen and his group quickly reached there, and began the inspection. Suddenly, a loud voice came from a distant place. "Ha ha, I did it! I found an egg!" Everyone heard the voice and immediately rushed towards him. They were surprised to find a young disciple who was holding a 1-meter-long egg in his hands and was laughing like a crazy guy. Now that he found an egg, this almost instantly increased his importance in the eyes of other experts. Just look at the extent of his happiness. But he has made a mistake of thinking that just because he found an egg, he can subjugate the cub. That's a wishful thinking right there. An expert commented with a disdainful look on his face. Just wait and witness how he gets killed by the cub. Sure, I expect nonetheless from the cub of a legendary demon beast from ancient era. Yi Shiwen glimpsed at the egg and couldn't conceal the greedy look in his eyes. After all, there was a high probability that this cub contained the noble blood of an ancient god beast, just like Warhawk's new pet. So far, Yi Shiwen had only seen gods' descendants who were basically separated by hundreds of generations from the original gods. But there was a chance that this egg belonged to a real god. One could imagine why this cub was going to be a rare and priceless treasure. The young expert did not waste a single moment, and immediately used his hands to inject Jin Yuan into the egg, forcing it to hatch. He was not a fool, knew very well that everyone was eyeing the egg, and if he tried to escape now, then he would surely be tracked by others. So, his only option was to forcibly make it hatch on the spot and subjugate the cub. The elite young geniuses that were summoned on this island were no stupid. They were very smart, and knew how to act in a given situation. No one interrupted the hatching process, and continued to watch from sidelines. It was hard to determine how long it took, but the egg finally began to hatch. Caca! 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 The eggshell broke off little by little, and finally, a little black beast crawled out of it. Everyone exclaimed at this scene when they saw a meter-long cub with its whole body covered with profane breath. Judging by its appearance, it looked like a wolf, more like a coyote because of its small appearance. Its black body was overflowing with terrifying breath. One could say that a seemingly divine glory was overflowing from its body. The young expert was going to reach out and touch it, but it suddenly opened its eyes. There was an aggressive look in its eyes, and just then, it opened its mouth and shot a beam of energy that blasted the arm of that young expert. A pitiful scream echoed everywhere as the bottom half part of the egg, that was still intact, fell to the ground and disintegrated into several pieces. The coyote stood on the ground, uttered a loud howl, then coldly looked at the human experts, as if issuing a warning to stay away. It just took a few seconds for its quivering limbs to stand firmly on the ground. And the very next instant, it appeared vigorous and healthy as if it was not a newborn at all. Its growth was almost visible to naked eye, just too amazing. It looked like a coyote but with a fearsome oppressive aura. The experts began to look for an opportunity to grab it. However, no one knew that its first few words would be, "You fuckers." Then it turned around to run away. Everyone was stunned by this. What the fuck just happened? A newborn cub actually spoke. No, it swore to be specific. In general, a demon beast's wisdom was dependent on its strength and level, but this scene was still hard to digest. It was common knowledge that it was always difficult for demon beasts to acquire wisdom, especially for low-level demon beasts. But the truth was that it was equally difficult even for high-level demon beasts. The only difference was that Sciention-level demon beasts could not attain high wisdom no matter how much they tried, but high-level demon beasts, though after facing a lot of difficulties, could actually achieve great wisdom and intelligence, enough to be able to speak like humans. But, irrespective of level or strength, it was never easy for demon beasts to attain enough wisdom to speak like human beings. It was simply unheard of that a newborn cub could actually speak so fluently. It really came as a shock for everyone. Just what was the origin of this coyote? Now, everyone had started to feel that it had a tyrannical background. Color of greed began to appear in everybody's eyes. A burly expert suddenly rushed forward shouting, "This cub is mine!" His big hand went forward to grab the coyote. "I am not your sister, fucker!" The small cub cursed out loud and spat a divine beam towards that expert. Bang! He screamed while his whole body disintegrated in front of everyone. He died almost instantly. But his death was not enough to stop others from pursuing the cub. The cub saw many people rushing towards it, and immediately turned around to flee from there. A stream of divine light appeared beneath his feet and suddenly boosted his speed several times. "Ha ha ha, this wolf or dog or whatever it is. It is too much fun!" Wu Shaochuan laughed loudly like a madman. It was fun to see how everyone was trying best to catch this foul-mouthed cub. Even Mu Ling's eyes flashed with a curious look clearly visible in them. After all, the cub really intrigued him. He had never witnessed such a bizarre scene before. There were 200 to 300 experts in the vicinity, and all of them instantly rushed toward the escaping cub. The cub was very tyrannical. It was jumping from left to right to throw off the chasers. No one was able to catch up with its speed. In fact, its agility skill was so advanced that it would make anyone wonder about its background. Soon, it disappeared in a blink of an eye and left only a sense of regret in everyone's heart. But at this time, Yi Shiwen suddenly moved, and in a flash, a beam of light appeared beneath him and blasted him forward like a super jet. Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan also followed after him. "Who is this man?" He suddenly began to chase, but with his agility skill, it should be impossible to catch the cub. Someone said. "He looks somewhat familiar. Oh wait, I think. This guy is that infamous Yi Shiwen from the rumors." "Yes, you are right. I saw how he single-handedly slaughtered those two tyrants." "He is undoubtedly that Yi Shiwen, but he has not come out for a long time. I almost forgot his appearance. He hasn't appeared for past few months, but he suddenly shows up today. Did he actually come here for the egg? There's nothing to be surprised about. After all, who isn't interested in these demon beast eggs? He would not even bother to chase if he was not interested. Well, considering his strength, he should be able to deal with that cub, but he lacks enough speed to catch up with it. The cub is too fast for any of us." Yi Shiwen and the other two suddenly vanished from there, and this caught the crowd's attention. At this time, a pair of wings appeared behind Yi Shiwen. These were devil wings but were thoroughly covered with golden light. The wings were certainly generated from a devil power technique, but since they were wrapped in a layer of golden divinities, Yi Shiwen wasn't worried about exposing them in front of everyone. To be continued dash. Chapter 256. Chapter 256. Great changes on the Demon Island. The Devil Wings no longer gave off the feel of being made up of dense mochi, though its mighty magical powers were still intact, but the ominous devil magic had been replaced by a divine feel. NT, mochi equals devil chi, the people of Jinwujia might not care about the evil ways of martial arts, but they were very much concerned about devil ways of martial arts. Evil way and devil way are two different forms of martial arts. After all, devil race was by far the strongest archenemy of humanity. When Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings, his speed suddenly rose dramatically. He tore a golden streamer in the sky and instantly went towards that small wolf. The wolf cub initially thought that it had gotten rid of the human experts, but did not expect to see a golden figure suddenly catching up. It suddenly cursed out loud. "Fuck, this is unreasonable!" Although it had a small body, it was very fast and was also using an extraordinary agility skill. It was so fast that even Yi Shiwen, with his strength equivalent to an expert of truth 9th stage, might not be able to catch up. No wonder he had to resort to using devil wings. In fact, even an expert of legendary realm might not be able to catch it. The extent of this cub's speed could be imagined. However, an expert of the legendary realm would not need to chase in the first place, since with just a flick of hand, they would directly confine the space, making it impossible to make an escape. But Yi Zaiwen's devil wings technique was not an ordinary devil technique. It was a top-tier technique, and since he had already perfected it, he was able to display extremely high acceleration and reach unimaginable speeds in a matter of seconds. Therefore, within a moment Yi Shiwen caught up with it and stretched out his hands that suddenly transformed into a big hand, made up of Jinyuan, and proceeded to grab it. It turned back and spat a divine beam towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Zaiwen's big hand was unaffected and directly caught the beam and crushed it. The coyote was very strong, but its strength was only comparable to that of an expert of truth 8th stage. However, its attacks were simply useless on Yi Shiwen, who possessed a tyrannical golden body. "You fucker!" the coyote said angrily and turned around to escape, but it was just a wishful thinking on its part, because Yi Zaiwen's big hand instantly printed a direct slap on this foul-mouthed cub's face, sending it flying for a large distance. Yi Zaiwen's wings fluttered and he slowly descended to the side of the cub that was lying on the ground. "You insolent bastard!" It was angry because this was the first time it was slapped by a human being after taking birth. It could not accept the fact that it had been defeated by a human, not just in speed but also strength. Yi Shiwen grinned while thinking that it was really very intriguing. He asked, "Well, what is your family background?" The cub pretended as if it didn't hear anything and simply ignored Yi Shiwen. "You should consider answering, because if you don't, I would prefer cooking a pot of dog soup using you as the ingredient, so delicious," Yi Shiwen said with an evil smile. "Go fuck yourself, this prince is a wolf, get it? I am not a dog," the cub instantly said in an angry tone. "Whatever," Yi Shiwen said dismissively. "Why are there so many eggs belonging to ridiculously powerful beasts buried in this area? If you answer honestly, I'll let you go." Yi Shiwen was not particularly interested in subduing an extraordinary beast cub, especially this one. He could see that this wolf cub's wisdom was way too high for an ordinary demon beast. Yi Shiwen was impressed by its intelligence, strength, and skills. There was a high possibility that subjugation might not work on it because its wisdom was similar to that of human beings, not to mention it had a rebellious personality. Yi Shiwen could not say for sure that he could subjugate it, and if he could not make it willingly surrender, and ended up hurting it in the process, then it might summon danger for him. Since he was not aware of this cub's background, which was bound to be extraordinary. Moreover, Yi Shiwen believed that there should be more eggs buried in this area and he would get plenty of opportunities later on. Yi Shiwen mainly wanted to know why there were such extraordinary demon beast eggs in this area. Also, just like Warhawk attracted the attention of a legendary level demon beast senior, he also needed to be careful not to offend any high-level demon beasts for his own good. But one thing was certain, that there was a hidden secret behind all this. "I do not know," the cub mumbled while still lying on the ground as if feigning death. At this time, Mu Ling and Wu Xiaochuan also arrived and saw the small wolf playing possum on the ground. They were a bit surprised, did not know what exactly happened here. Yi Shiwen explained things to them and they felt like having a headache all of a sudden. Of course, they could not hurt this cub, otherwise that might attract the attention of a legendary level demon beast. Yishuan vaguely guessed that this cub's background should be extraordinary. If something happened to it, then he would definitely be chased down on this island for the remaining months. Usually, as soon as the eggs hatched, those demon beast seniors would immediately appear to protect the newborn baby beast, without giving any chance to human experts to hurt or capture the baby beast. This meant that this cub was also one of those so-called untouchable and precious babies. However, it was not saying anything, rather there was a treacherous and slick look on its face, as if it would rather die than surrender. Yishuan was a bit surprised by this and secretly praised it. Yishuan did not have a way to find out about the secret from the wolf cub, though it clearly knew something and was not willing to tell. Since he could not resort to brutal means to force the information out of its mouth, as its rebellious personality was a big hurdle. So he decided to keep this wolf cub at his side. Perhaps, later on, it would willingly tell things about this mysterious island. This wolf cub was the only way to find out the real secrets about this strange island. As far as the wolf cub's attitude was concerned, it had non-violent, non-cooperation attitude, and its only option was to stay with Yishuan. The race to capture eggs was getting intense and complicated. A lot of people had started going crazy to obtain an egg of their own. After the wolf cub, several demon beast eggs were dug out, but nothing good came out of it. Most of the cubs fled, and almost every time, demon beast seniors rushed to protect their own, and this led to a lot of chaos. In the end, for human experts, their hard work was all in vain. Certainly, there were some experts who were successful, such as Ji-moon obtained a Hudiosaurus, butterfly lizard, which was an extremely rare demon beast. Its whole body was of a Tyrannosaurus, but with a pair of butterfly wings on its back. However, the third super expert, Wang Purple, was the most unfortunate one, because when he finally got a cub, it attracted a demon beast senior, and he was half beaten to death, not to mention that cub was also taken away from him. The good thing was that the opposite party was not serious, otherwise he would have already been killed. The unrest continued to get stronger and stronger. The silence of the night spread a chill everywhere, while the constant shrieks could be heard transmitting from the ominous mountain. The roars of several demon beasts also disappeared under the overwhelming presence of those shrieks. Not far away, the Yellow River was flowing down the forest, and numerous ghost soldiers could be seen marching upon it. They had been following this daily routine for thousands of years, going on an expedition against an unknown enemy. Mu Ling was indulged in a continuous battle in the Yellow River and basically cultivating. He was fortunate to be able to practice in this river of the dead, which was also the main reason why his cultivation progress rate was so high. Several days have passed. Why haven't your relatives come to pick you up? A large bonfire was burning high and mighty, and a considerably large demon beast was supported on two thick branches and was being roasted in the fire. As the roasting continued, its meat was gradually turning yellow while the fat oil was dripping down into the fire, contributing to its intensity. Not far away, the wolf cub was constantly pacing back and forth. When compared to a few days ago, its size was now significantly larger, and it also looked a lot stronger. Obviously, it was still constantly complaining. This prince is not going to eat this lowly demon beast. Nonetheless, its eyes were constantly staring at the almost cooked demon beast. It was reluctant to remove his gaze from the delicious food. Yishuan slowly rotated the branch to roast the uncooked portions of flesh, and the delicious fragrance suddenly spread in the air. Yi Zaiwan had been relaxing for the last few days. A short break was necessary to stabilize his inner state. Anyway, there was no point in being impatient when it came to cultivation. Yishuan felt odd because when other demon babies came out, soon, demon beast seniors rushed to take them away. But this wolf cub had been out for quite some time, and no one came to pick it up. Though he did not know what means they used to find out about the birth of these cubs, but in this case, Yishuan felt something was off. They are all dead. The wolf cub did not turn his head and said in a low voice. Its eyes were still staring at the demon beast meat. From the beginning, he tried several times to escape, but each time, he was caught by Yishuan within seconds. Now, he was an orphan who did not know where to go. Though it did not take him too long to understand that Yi Shiwen was not going to hurt him. According to what he said, Yi Shiwen also came to know that he was homeless. No wonder no one came to pick him up. However, when Yi Shiwen asked him about other things, he refused to talk about anything. Just when Yi Shiwen seemed all prepared to taste the meat, suddenly, horrible shrieks began to echo everywhere. The ominous chi swept from the mountain and instantly obscured the entire sky in the form of dense black clouds. The condensed black clouds suddenly gave rise to endless rain on the island. The sudden invasion of Inchi and Deadki sucked away lives out of the trees, leaving them in a withered state. The barbecue was instantly corroded by the torrential downpour and ruined the bonfire. Then, Yi Shiwen and the others suddenly heard extremely loud roars of demon beasts coming from the depths of the island. They had never heard such horrifying roars before, and it was not hard to tell that these roars belonged to extremely tyrannical demon beasts. To be continued. Chapter 257. Chapter 257. Tomb's slave reappears. What the fuck, my meat? It's all ruined now. The wolf cub could not bear to see the delicious meat corroding in front of his eyes, and his anger suddenly soared to the sky. The so-called proud prince could not control this outburst. Yi Shiwen immediately stood up and looked at the sky. Wu Shaochuan and Mu Ling also looked at the sky and did not know what actually happened all of a sudden. Beep! A tyrannical golden bird flew across the sky and was headed towards the huge ominous mountain. Yi Shiwen noticed that this golden bird was actually the golden-winged bird that had destroyed his boat when he was entering the island. Then a giant flaming bird flew from another direction and went towards the ominous mountain. Seems like a major event, Wu Shaochuan murmured. It was easy to tell from the present environment on the island that something was off, and this was certainly an important matter. And it was kind of scary to see that this matter was somehow related to the ominous mountain. The rain got harder and black clouds enveloped the entire island. It seemed as if the entire island had been swallowed by a deathly atmosphere, making it seem like the world of death itself. Yi Shiwen and Wu Shaochuan immediately used Xingyuan to resist the corrosive rain, whereas Mu Ling was not all affected by the rain. On the contrary, the rain was actually absorbed by his body. Then, abruptly, a figure appeared in the distance. Yi Shiwen saw a somewhat emaciated old man flying in the rain, directly across the sky. He seemed very far away, but the very next instant, he appeared in front of them. It was actually the tomb's slave. Yi Zaiwen's pupils shrank because he clearly remembered what tomb's slave told him about making a vow to always guard the tombs and not being able to leave the premises of graveyard. But now he seemed to have come out, and this certainly showed that something big happened on this island which compelled him to come out of the graveyard. And this was certainly related to the sudden outbreak on the ominous mountain. Greetings to Honorable Senior! Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling quickly saluted to show respect to the old man. Wu Shaochuan did not know who he was, but since Yi Shiwen was showing respect to this old man, then he was bound to be a great persona. So, Wu Shaochuan quickly followed the other two and gave his salute. What have you decided about the thing I told you earlier? Are you ready to take up the task? The tomb slave said. It is solely in your control whether you want to do it or not, but remember, if you are unable to accomplish this task, then forget about leaving this island. You might actually lose your lives. Yi Zaiwen's complexion suddenly changed, so this matter was really very serious. Moreover, they might not be able to leave this island. For these geniuses, staying on this island was only a part of an adventure. No one wanted to spend their entire lives on this deadly island. Their motive was to get stronger on this island, then go back and display their newly obtained strength to the entire world, not to mention also to contribute to their respective sex strength. However, this matter had turned into a serious possibility that everyone would end up dying on this island. Senior, what exactly has happened? At least let us know, Yi Shiwen said. At least he would like to know what had really happened, then he would further decide whether to go or not. What we are witnessing is the period of time that comes once in a millennium. During this period, those undead that reside on Ominous Mountain experience great suppression and are at their weakest level. The old man explained. In fact, the undead are confined in a powerful matrix method on the Ominous Mountain, and it's impossible for them to come down, but the situation has gotten worse because a gap has appeared in the matrix method and those undead will most likely come out through the gap. So I sent the demon beasts of this island to rush to the Ominous Mountain and make sure to block the gap, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. Even if the undead face a major reduction in their strengths during this period of time, they are still very scary, and if even one of them managed to come out, then forget the demon island, the entire world would face a serious danger. Now, they finally understood the seriousness of this situation. Especially, Yishuan understood better because he could tell that this would perhaps affect the entire world. These so-called undead monsters were insanely formidable and scary. Even after facing this suppression that appeared once in a millennium, they were still so terrifying that even one was enough to threaten the world's security. However, this matrix method was so powerful that it was able to confine these undead monsters for tens of thousands of years. According to what Yemo said, the person, who must have set up this matrix tens thousands of years ago, was truly a terrifying being, simply beyond the comprehension of this realm. However, a gap appeared in such a powerful matrix method, though only a small gap, but enough to put the entire world in danger. The creator of this matrix method must be an extremely formidable being. Or perhaps, it was not created by a person but an organization. Yishuan had already started to notice that there was basically no subordination system among the demon beasts on this island. It was as if demon beasts had divided their respective territories on the island and no one interfered with each other. Of course, there was no sign of intrusion as well, which indicated a very smooth regulation and territorial understanding among the beasts. The demon beasts only hunted in their respective territories and there were no signs of cross-border attacks. However, the appearance of ancient eggs was enough to hint that this demon island was hiding a secret, but this time, things got even weirder than before. The wise and exotic demon beasts of legendary level, or above, were actually following the orders of the tomb's slave. It seemed like this island previously belonged to a tyrannical faction, and although there was a decline in its influence over time, the chief of each demon beast clan was possibly still a member of that ancient faction, and the old man was their boss. And even if this faction's influence had declined, were still a tyrannical existence for Jinwujie. It was like a clash between two disastrous forces. Why did the demon island appear once in every 50 years? What was the reason behind summoning young heroes to this island? What was the point of ghost soldiers going on an expedition every night in the Yellow River, and against whom? Who was this old man? Were the demon beasts on this island really the descendants of God? Yishuan was immersed in deep thoughts as these questions quickly flashed in his mind. Looking at the gravity of this situation, what can we do? Yishuan asked. You can uncover that seal since those undead are now under their strain, and you can take advantage of this opportunity to travel to the ominous mountain. But you will get only one chance. If you fail, that will be your end. The tomb slave said in a serious tone. But my offer is still valid. As long as you can uncover that seal, I will give you the right to my inheritance. You think about it while I will go inform the other human experts about the situation. Then the old man turned around and disappeared into the thin air. The insane level of his agility skill could literally shock the world. Just before leaving, he glanced at the wolf cub, then left from there. The other two looked at Yishuan and asked, What should we do now? I advise you to do what the old man said because this is big trouble. The wolf cub suddenly spoke. Even if a part of the Zhou star array is broken, it is enough to become a door to unleash deadly creatures that have waited for so long to wreak havoc on this world. We have to do it, guys. There is no other way out. If what the senior said is true, then we will most likely die if we don't do something. Wu Shaochuan clenched his fist and said, If we don't act, we die. But if we take the risk and survive, we may get that inheritance he talked about. Yishuan said, as even he could clearly see the hidden meaning in the old man's words, that they had no choice but to take up this task. Earlier, The old man had said that if Yixiwen and Mu Ling refused to take up the task, he would wait for another 50 years to pass on the task to another generation of geniuses. But now he seemed anxious, and it seemed like he really wanted them to take up this task and succeed. Yixiwen was no longer thinking about the inheritance because survival was a much bigger issue now. Come on then, there's no point in further discussion, let's go, Mu Ling said in a straightforward manner. The trio made the final decision and rushed in the direction of the huge ominous mountain of the undead. They were planning to do all they could in their power before the disaster would strike. But all of a sudden, Yixiwen was actually surprised when he saw the wolf cub following after them. The same wolf cub who tried several times to escape was now silently following them on his own accord. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.